Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei was smart like Ayanokōji and manipulate girls for his harem? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content, and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the anigrinner for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. Link in the description. Within bare white walls, a single, rather young individual sits. Alone, dressed in a simple white gown, this individual watches with cold indifference the lesson taking place in front of him. His desk, that same blank white color, with a simple sheet of white paper on it. He doesn't look around him at his environment, as he knows what it looks like. It hasn't changed since the first time he saw it many years ago, and he knows it never will. The only thing that ever changes in this place is the number of other individuals there with him. And it was never an increase. Plus, as the instructor begins explaining the rules of this next test, he lets his mind wander onto the last words he heard from one of the only other nearly successful subjects to come from his generation. I want to be free, I want to have friends. Isn't it normal to think this way? Look around you. It's just us, just me and you. And we will stay like this, for years, maybe even more. Think on it. Icarus before that person left and never came back, though they did look over their shoulder at him as they left. He always wondered what the look in their eyes was, as he never understood it. As he comes out of his thoughts, the instructor finishes the presentation, completing his explanation of the complex problem to be solved, one that looked somewhat similar to one introduced during the recent lectures. The instructor turns to look at the individual, still seated with a plain and blank look on his face. The instructor, a few moments of analyzing the individual seated at the desk, asks a single question. Instructor, do you understand? The instructor asked, rather bored and uninterested. Routine tests were conducted constantly. This would just be another example of just how successful this generation has been. The results would be as he expected. They weren't sure why Sensei continued this generation. Calling it a generation anymore is generous, as they only have a single remaining subject. But they wouldn't question his employer's words and instructions after all. They had seen what happened to those who did. The answer the instructor received was short and simple. Yes. As always, no room for error or wasted energy, as it would not be tolerated. Simple, straightforward, and to the point, but what else was to be expected of this subject? There were rules and conditions in that room. If those conditions and rules were broken, punishments were delivered. Both the instructor and subject knew this and were either concerned with the outcome of their actions, or had no intention of breaking those rules and conditions in the first place. The process had been in motion for a long time after all. Feeling satisfied with the subject's answer, the instructor spoke once again. Instructor, then you may begin. Keep in mind, you will only have access to a single sheet of additional note paper for your calculations, as any notations other than your answer on the provided answer sheet will result in failure. You have 1 hour, starting from the time you leave your seat, for the additional piece of note paper, or when you turn over your answer sheet. You may begin. After finishing the short, scripted speech, the instructor turned and left the room, leaving the young individual alone, once again, in this oppressing white space. After a moment of looking at the problem to be solved, the subject gets out of the simple metal chair provided for him and moves over to the corner of the room, where a similar, simple blank table stands. On the table sits a single piece of blank white X paper. After grabbing the note paper he was allowed, the subject returned to his seat and turned over the answer sheet he had been provided on his desk. Approximately minutes later, in another location, the instructor enters a room filled with desks and computers and a large window on one wall, with individuals seated at many of the various workstations set up. A tall, well-built man stands behind his own large desk with multiple monitors on it, a stern and disinterested look on his face, as he focuses on one of the monitors on his desk more than the others. As the instructor approaches the man, his attention never leaving whatever is on that monitor, the instructor sees the man hold up his hand and grunt in acknowledgement. The instructor waits a few moments to be properly acknowledged before speaking. When the man looks away from the monitor and at the instructor standing in front of him, the man looks at the instructor, his eyes flashing over every detail the instructor presents and doesn't, before speaking. What is it? How is his progress coming along? The man spoke, seemingly irritated at the interruption. The instructor goes to answer, but as is the common reaction when speaking to Sensei, the words get stuck in his throat. After getting an even more irritated glare from the man, the instructor begins to speak. Instructor, his progress is truly remarkable. Sensei, he's an unquestionable genius. I don't think we've ever had subject like this in the past, and to be completely honest with you, Sensei, I don't think we'll see another one like him again. As the last sentence left their lips, the instructor immediately wished they said that. The look that they received from Sensei, if looks could kill, they would have dropped dead then and there. Expecting the worst, the instructor begins to shake slightly. However, what Sensei said next truly shocked them, including everyone present there in the room. Sensei, I see, and is that all? Are you implying that this research is destined to fail simply because of this subject? Said the man called Sensei. Instructor, and no sir, not at all. I'm simply stating that I find it unlikely that we will be as lucky as to able to come across another like him again. I have never doubted our mission, I just am stating that this is beyond what we've seen from the previous generations. And to think the one that did it was the instructor answered, concerned that he may have said one thing too many. As he was going to continue what he was saying, a sound came from the monitors. I've completed the assigned task. A monotone and dull voice played through the speakers. Instructor, it seems he's done already, Sensei. I'll be going now. The instructor stammered out before turning on his heel and making his way out of the room, seemingly as fast as he could. Not long after the instructor left the room, Sensei pulled out a phone and made a quick call that didn't last long. Those in the room who had heard the exchange between Sensei and the instructor understood what that call was about, and shook their heads in both disbelief and disappointment. This was another colleague gone this month. Hopefully, no one else would say something to upset Sensei. After hanging up the call, Sensei turned to look at the rest of the room with various staff members present. He looked around before turning away and looking through the glass, down at a completely white room with only a single young individual seated at a simple white desk. With his back turned to those in the room, he began to speak. Sensei, being born a genius means nothing. Do not forget the purpose of this organization is to create absolute excellence out of even the most inferior of prospects. Don't ever forget that. And don't ever show him any favoritism just because he's my son. Even if it means it destroys him. Sensei walks back to his desk and takes a seat before opening a file on his desk. The file belonged to the most promising and successful subject they had ever seen. Subject. I looked at the ground, at the pool of sanguine fluids slowly surrounding me, pulling me further and further into the darkness. Red the same color as her hair. I look at my hand covered in that same spilled, wasted, truly average sanguine fluid. Was this the end for me? How ironic. But no, just as my eyes were feeling heavy from my injuries and the exhaustion of the fight I had just gone through, suddenly in front of me appeared a figure. Red, her hair is even more crimson than strawberry blonde, just like the color currently running down my hand. How interesting. I think this might be the first time in a long time that I've seen my own blood spilled out around me. Blood on my hands is something I could care less about, especially if it's someone else's. However, this is truly a first for me. Especially since my time there. Well, would you look at this, I read a study in that place that said that when people are on the verge of death, not only does time seem to dilate and get longer and longer, but they tend to reminisce about memories past. I've lived long years, not a long time, and I wouldn't call it a good time, but it was time enough for me. At least I'm dying free and outside of that place. I'm certain that is more than many of the others who were once with me can say. Long, objectively beautiful, crimson hair. Yes, just like her. Who is this her? Anyway, I don't have a very clear memory of her, and what our time together was like, nor do I truly care. So why at a time when most would likely be thinking about their parents, friends, family, or just their unfulfilled plans for their life, am I thinking about a woman, whom I don't recognize? You will live for my sake. That was what I heard the woman say before everything went black. Ah, I see. So that's how it is. RD person POV. Outside of Ko Academy, in the P field, a sunny, warm day shines on the city of Ko, specifically on the well-maintained, beautiful, and prestigious Ko Academy campus. Sounds of students fill the air as activities take place across the campus. Various groups of people mull about and talk to themselves. Groups of girls are speaking in hushed tones about who knows what, and some are participating in the PE exercises being held at the moment. Most dressed in their gym clothes, move around either unaware or uncaring of the conversation occurring between two individuals, with one just stuck in the middle of the raunchy hormone-filled conversation taking place. As others are going about their business and having fun, 3 individuals lie on a grass hill overlooking the field where PE exercises are taking place. These 3, named Matsuda, Motohama, and Issei, having been dubbed, unfairly in one member's case, if you ask Issei, the pervert trio lay with their backs in the grass, lazing about and looking at either the sky in Issei's case or the girls in their PE uniforms working out as the other 2 were. If I may, I'd like to pose an interesting question. Are all human beings truly equal these days? Everywhere you go there's talk about the fight for equality. As a wise man once said, heaven does not create one person above or below another. People like to throw these words around. That's not the whole quote. It goes on to say that, while we are all equal at birth, pretty soon, things begin to change. Academic effort is what sets some people apart to rise above the others. At any rate, humans change over time based on their actions. Truth be told, at the end of the day, equality is just a fantasy. And most of us go through life denying the fact that we live in a meritocracy. Issei had found himself lost in thought while staring at the clouds and watching the birds above use their wings to fly. Far off of the ground, and far away from any of the problems plaguing the world of today. However, it wasn't long before one of the 2 perverts broke the nice, peaceful calm with a loud obnoxious sigh, followed up by what usually comes after. "Saimayan, I want to touch some boobs, don't you agree, Haida Issei-kun?" cried one of the 2 perverts, a lanky, scrappy-looking, young teen with a buzz cut and prominent eyebrows, said listlessly while turning his head to look at the plain young man in the middle with brown hair falling in a curtain shaping his perpetually neutral, yet handsome face. "Issei, not really, I kinda want to just relax and enjoy looking at the clouds pass by." "Don't say that, you're making me feel empty," said the other pervert. A shorter young man with scraggly dark black hair and glasses also turned to look at Issei, who was lying in between the 2, sandwiched in a constant bubble of uncontrolled, unchecked teenage male hormones. After hearing this, all Issei can do is prevent himself from sighing too loudly as he sits up to once again take in his surroundings. In front of him on the field, people seem to have formed into their smaller subgroups with their friends to talk and enjoy themselves, while others continued to work out while still in those smaller groups. On the other side of the field, Issei can see a group of girls jogging laps, likely to be coming around again soon, which would surely get the attention and comments of those 2 going again. So to avoid another ridiculous conversation that only gets more embarrassing for them, and irritating for him, when it ends up overheard by the groups they talk about, Issei tries to start a conversation. A simple conversation with basic small talk, something Issei has spent the last year and a few months trying his hardest to master. Especially this past month since he enrolled here at Ku. After all, this is his first time in a normal school. "Issei, Matsuda, Motohama, why is it that you chose to enroll in this school specifically?" Issei sat up and looked at the 2 before posing the question. "Matsuda, this is Ko Private Academy. It was once an all-girls school that just recently turned co-ed. Which means that there's an overwhelming girl-to-boy ratio, plus so many of the girls are beautiful, and Ko Private Academy receives tons of foreign exchange students, as well," the bald-headed pervert said. As he looked around the area, his eyes began to sparkle like he saw something absolutely amazing. Following his line of sight, Issei was unsurprised to find him staring dreamily at whatever girl he could get his eyes on. "Motohama, as a result, us boys are scarce here in Ko Academy, meaning that we will be popular and surrounded by beautiful girls. It truly is like fish in a barrel," said the bespectacled pervert, as he pushed his glasses up, causing a glint to prevent Issei from seeing what he was looking at, not that he necessarily needed to in order to guess. "Motohama and Matsuda, in other words a harem," the 2 of them shouted together, as Issei could only look on in sheer wonder at their lack of dignity or social awareness. Not that he was any better. Flashback. 1 month earlier. Issei's POV. The beginning of the school year is the most important point in anyone's high school career. The very point in time when you create an image of yourself that will forever set the precedent around you while in school. Therefore, it is extremely important to make a good first impression should you want to ensure that you do not end up being made a pariah of the class or a perpetual loner, even more so in my case, as I enrolled at Ko Academy as a second-year transfer student from Tokyo. Thankfully, I have practiced my introduction, time and time again as Matsuo-san suggested I do. While I was able to get a basic understanding of social norms thanks to Matsuo-san, there was so little time for me to truly prepare before having to make a move to ensure the security of my freedom, away from that man. I continued to practice what he had suggested I do in the small apartment, about a mile away from Ko Academy that I was able to attain, with help from Matsuo-san of course. It was during the introduction of my other classmates who would share homeroom with me, that I was thinking of all this, and before I knew it, my turn had come. A young man, who had jumped to lead the introductions, was looking at me with kind eyes and a soft smile. He had odd greenish blonde hair and was somewhat handsome. I could see quite a few of the girls in my classroom already fawning over him in the near future if they haven't started already. His name was Hirata, I believe, A/N. Yes, I know it's just Hirata from Kote. However, as far as I can remember, we don't really ever see or get names for Issei's fellow classmates besides the main cast of DxD. So I went ahead and took Hirata. You deal with it. Hirata, excuse me. It's your turn now, almost everyone else has gone but you. He said with that same soft smile. Issei, Humi, all I got for an answer was that same smile. Might as well get this over with. For the sake of the future of my school life. Matsuo-san, please watch over me. Internet Sensei, don't fail me now. I stood up from my seat and began my well-rehearsed introduction. My name is Issei Hyoudou. I'm excited to study with you all. I'm not really good at anything in particular. I'll do my best to get along with you all. My voice remained even and monotone throughout my introduction, never really fluctuating with any emotion, just my natural vocal cadence. It went as well as rehearsed. My lack of social understanding and experience has left me feeling lacking in judging from the pitiful looks and sympathy applause I'm receiving from the class. I blew it. I bowed my head respectfully and sat back in my seat, waiting quietly for class to begin. Present time. RD person POV. Matsuda, oh yeah. What awaits us here is the high life. Matsuda had shouted excitedly, pumping his fist in the air and grabbing nothing before pulling it back down to his chest in some sort of victory pose. Motohama, exactly. Good fortune will be spilling over. Soon we'll be surrounded by tons of boobs. Motohomo had exclaimed to no one in particular, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose again, causing them to shine and hide his eyes behind the glare. Issei, exactly as expected from these two. I find it hard to bear their constant perversions, however these two do indeed have their uses. And I will use them, as I see fit. Until they lose their usefulness, I suppose the damage to my already non-existent social life is a good and fair trade-off. From behind the trio hears a group of girls jogging along while keeping a simple fight cadence for their breathing. The two turn to look at the passing group, while Issei continues to look ahead of him towards the school buildings, just a ways away. Issei, I suppose that was your plan, but here you two are, 1 whole month into your second year, and you still don't even have a girlfriend, much less a harem, Issei said without looking back at Matsuda or Motohama, his voice remaining calm and monotone as always. Motohama, don't say that. You're hurting my soul, Motohama whined in response. As the two begin to sulk at the statement Issei made, Issei begins to think to himself, Issei, should I encourage these two? I know that if I do, they'll rope me into whatever scheme they have, and while most times it ends poorly for the three of us, even though all past times, I was an innocent bystander, who was caught up in their messes, only because I was associated with them. I can't have these two losing faith and morale over some of the factual statements I make. Maybe just this once, I ought to encourage it. Let's see what they'll do. Issei then stood up with the two, before putting a hand on both of their shoulders to break their attention away from the group of female classmates jogging by. Well, if you give up, you've already lost. Issei noticed another one of their male classmates, though not in his class, approaching. One Yuto Kiba, also known as the Prince of Ko Academy, specifically amongst the female demographic. Issei sometimes overheard rumors about him being the most sought-after boy by the girls at Ko Academy. Not that he cared. To Issei, popularity seemed like more trouble than it was worth, besides drawing way too much attention. He also knows how the two perverts feel about him, and the distaste they have for him. You guys still have a chance, you know. Issei finished his statement just as the prince was passing close by. Issei finished his statement, timed perfectly with the squeals of a group of 3 female classmates approaching Kiba. Female classmate, Kiba-kun. What are you doing now? Are you busy? A girl with short cropped brown hair and hazel eyes, standing in the middle of the group of 3, asked Yuta Kiba hopefully. Female classmate, say, why don't we go for karaoke or something? Would you like that? Asked a plain-looking girl with shoulder-length black hair and dark-colored eyes, standing to the left in the trio. Yuta Kiba, sorry, but I've got to get to my club. As polite as can be and with a smile on his face, Kiba declined the female trio's offer, to much dismay and whines of disappointment. I really am sorry, even after you were kind enough to go out of your way to invite me. Kiba finished his declination, remaining as charming and princely as ever, causing the trio to swoon slightly as he turned and walked away. Issei, interesting Yuta Kiba, you have my attention. I can clearly learn and improve my social skills if I'm around you. Perhaps just observing I'll be able to understand more about human nature itself. If you truly are the prince everyone and yourself paint you to be, then you should have no trouble honoring the simple request of a pauper, won't you? Issei's train of thought was interrupted by Motohama's frustrated grumblings. Motohama, Yuta Kiba, Class C. He's the one thing these girls here have their eyes on. Motohama rambled, more to himself than Issei, at least Issei was sure of that. Matsuda, and the enemy of all boys in Ko Academy. He finished Motohama's thought while clenching his fist in frustration and jealous rage. Issei, from what I understand, he's fairly contemporarily handsome, and has some of the best marks in both his class and our year. Plus he has a strong, shining personality similar to Hirata from our class. He has them waiting in line for him. Issei explained calmly, breaking it down more for himself as the newcomer than for them. However, Motohama, don't say that, then it's really all for nothing. Motohama continued to whine in response to Issei's logical breakdown of Kiba's superiority. Matsuda, ugh, the world is so unfair. Matsuda seemed as though he was going to continue complaining before he caught sight of his watch. Oh, it's almost time. Matsuda then turned around and started packing what he had pulled out of his bag. Once he had finished packing, he grabbed his bag with a smile on his face. As he began to walk away, Issei called out to him. Issei, where are you going? Matsuda, Issei asked, an eyebrow raised in suspicion. Issei had a vague idea of what it was likely that Matsuda would do. However, the response Issei received only pushed him further into believing that he would be getting into trouble. Matsuda only turned around, giving him a thumbs up and a wry smile before continuing to walk off. Motohama followed quickly after him. It seems to have worked. Let's go see what they're going to do this time. I wonder if the prince will come and put a stop to it. As I understand it, he has some social ties here. Maybe I'll be able to get closer to him without exerting myself too much for no long-gain profit. Issei lets out a sigh before grabbing his bag and following the duo into the woods, away from the main campus and school buildings. Issei's POV. After following the two perverts for about 10 minutes, we came across a fairly secluded area near a simple building with not much else around it. As I approached, I could hear sounds from inside the building, especially when I approached around the front. I saw quite a grouping of bamboo swords in their bags and cases near the open front door of the building. The other two were around back. It wasn't hard to find them with the way they were muttering and sputtering to themselves. I could hear them going on about ridiculous things as I rounded the corner, and saw the two of them on their hands and knees, asses in the air, fighting each other to get a better peek through a small peephole in the outside wall. Matsuda, Murayama's boobs are so big. Matsuda, struggling to contain himself, shouted. Motohama muttered to himself. I wasn't sure what those sequences of numbers meant, but knowing the two and having context clues, I could piece together what Motohama was measuring. Matsuda, Kaie's has such amazing legs. Matsuda, finding it hard to hold himself from practically shouting, continued. Motohama spit out yet another string of numbers. This was getting more and more surprising as it went, Motohama's capability to memorize this information. And where was he sourcing it from? If he was capable, or it seems more willing, he could be doing so much better than he is right now. Unfortunate, Matsuda. I was lucky enough to come across this spot one day during PE. Matsuda, continuing to get excited, said louder than before, Motohama, good job, Matsuda. Motohama got even louder than before. It was then that Motohama turned over his shoulder and saw me. I assume he got scared because he screamed, and Matsuda did the same. Idiots, the girls you were peeping on certainly heard you through the walls. It was as I was going to pull them away that they were caught. They had definitely been heard, as well as their precious peeping spot discovered. Someone on the other side had said something about finding a peeping hole. As they turned around to dash away, they knocked into me, pushing me over and disorienting me for a moment. As I lay on the ground for a minute, wondering how long it would take for the Kendo Club to get out here, I thought about what I was going to get on my way home. As I understand it, ice cream is a delicacy too good to be overlooked, so I was planning on going to an ice cream store on the way back to my apartment this afternoon. As I was beginning to daydream about the rich flavors I'd heard so much about, I heard them. They had arrived. The Kendo Club. As I sat up and made eye contact with Kendo Club, a girl I had encountered before, a senpai with light brown hair tied into a ponytail with bangs covering her forehead and sharp brown eyes, looked right down at me. Brown-haired Kendo Club girl, you guys again really? She asked, exasperated and irritated, holding a bamboo training sword in her hand and striking it against her palm in what I assumed to be a threatening manner. Hiya to you, pervert. All I can do is sigh as I allowed the bamboo weapons to beat down on me. All of this is for peaceful life-chan anyway, so it's worth it. The girls bring their weapons down after they've surrounded me. I take the beating for you, peaceful life-chan, so please wait for me and always be there for me. Minutes later, after taking my sacrificial beating, I managed to catch up to the two perverts who ran away before I could see what would happen. They had run off to an old school building way off in the middle of nowhere, it seemed. I managed to locate them, and as I came to take a seat next to them, they looked up at me with apologetic looks and sorry, but I knew what they meant to do. It's fine, after all, I was the one who instigated it this time. Issei, hitting me with bamboo swords, is it really necessary? I said, doing my best to sound truly injured and upset about the turn of events. Motohama, guess your luck ran out, huh, Issei-kun? Issei, no, you guys bailed on me and left me there. I wasn't even peeping. It might have been worth it if I had seen what I was hoping to, but no, I didn't, I replied, attempting to sound indignant. I'm not sure if it worked or not because Motohama didn't react beyond a lip twitch and a stifled laugh. Matsuda seemed to be not paying too much attention to us as his eyes were up on a window. I turned to look, and there I saw her, crimson hair flowing gently in the breeze, deep blue eyes, and a stunningly beautiful face. She sat in the window of the old school building looking out of the window down on us, likely hearing our conversation. At the sight of her, I could swear my heart almost sped up, but no, it remained the same as always. Interesting. It was once my attention went to her that Motohama looked as well. It seemed like she made eye contact with me briefly before turning away from the window. I certainly hoped she didn't see anything that made her uncomfortable. That would be a hassle. Issei, there's someone in the old schoolhouse, right? Odd, Issei said, looking up at the window, trying to make out anything within the room the girl with crimson hair was in. Unfortunately, he was unable to, so instead he turned his attention back to the two perverts. If people knew things, it was these two. Matsuda, such bright red hair, that's so pretty. Matsuda said absent-mindedly. Motohama, Rias Gremory. Motohama muttered. Something about him knowing those numbers made Issei incredibly uncomfortable. To be branded by the entire school as the pervert duo was one thing. He really hoped nothing criminal had happened yet. Matsuda, she's the president of the Occult Research Club. For her 3 years she's been studying here at Ko Academy. Matsuda added a drop of information, still listless in his answers and demeanor. It looked to Issei like Matsuda had been bewitched by a succubus or demon of some sort. Like the scenes he had seen in some of the shows and movies he managed to find time to watch these past 3 months. Motohama, I heard rumors that her family is from Northern Europe or something. She's super exotic. Motohama continued, not shutting up after. So Issei decided they should start making their way back to campus as classes were about to start again in a few short minutes. As the trio of boys begins to walk away, Issei steals one last glance over his shoulder at the old school building, more specifically at a window nearby the one they had seen the red-headed girl standing in. As he narrowed his eyes, he noticed a small flick of movement within the curtains. Satisfied, he turned back around and continued pushing the two perverts back to campus. RD person POV. Within the old school building, Rias Gremory peeks out from behind the curtain at the backs of the perverted trio as they walk away from the old school building. The one in the middle of the other two, the one with a blank expression and brown hair, she had seen something about him as she was sitting by the window when he looked right at her, into her eyes. After she had walked away from his line of sight, she wanted to take another look, and again even behind the curtain, she could feel his gaze lock with hers as he looked over his shoulder after beginning to walk away. With a startled huff, she takes a seat on an elegant sofa with wood lining and beautiful dark bluish-green cushions. With one leg rested over her other, Rias Gremory looks over a chessboard in mid-play. Nearby a girl with dark black hair tied up into a ponytail secured with a ribbon, with striking purple eyes, stands in a respectful attention, listening to whatever the crimson-haired girl speaks about. Rias Gremory. That boy just now, Rias said as she pondered the appropriate play for the setup on the chessboard in front of her. I'm sorry, ma'am, said the black-haired girl, still standing nearby. Rias Gremory. I meant the one in the middle, with the brown hair. Rias replied, somehow clarifying who she was speaking about to the girl with black hair. He's in Class B. I believe his name was Hyoudou. Why, is there something about him, ma'am? The girl with black hair asked Rias, slightly concerned with the interest being taken from nowhere. Rias Gremory. No, I must be mistaken. It was nothing. Rias responded as she picked up a rook and moved it towards center board. As she placed the piece down, she finished by saying, checkmate, before standing up off of the sofa and making her way over to a mirror on the wall. While bent over to check the board in surprise that Rias had finished and solved the puzzle she had set out so quickly, Rias makes it to the mirror and begins to undress while continuing to talk to Rias Gremory. It was a simple problem, she stated matter-of-factly while removing her school vestments. But I raised the difficulty quite a bit though, she said defeated. Rias Gremory. Yes. I look forward to the next one, as well. As Rias stated this, she had finished removing her school uniform and now stood there in nothing but her bra and panties, before also stripping those off as well. After, she leaves the room to a nearby bathroom where she takes a shower. RD person POV. After class, somewhere in Coast City, on an overpass over a busy highway, Issei Hyoudou walks alone, his eyes, like almost always, looking up at the sky above, watching for birds and butterflies in the sky, watching the clouds pass by as the setting sun paints them bright, beautiful golden colors. He truly wished it stirred something in him. He stopped on the overpass for a minute to watch as the sun disappeared over the horizon. Thinking about something so complex as art and beauty always made him confused. Not that Issei didn't know what the definition of those words was, he did, but about the concept of feeling behind such words. He had studied art, its properties, how to produce it, and its rich and vast history, but he never understood its purpose and true meaning. While Issei was lost in his thoughts, the sound of approaching footsteps snapped him out of it. Issei turned to look over his shoulder, and to his surprise he saw a girl in a uniform. He didn't recognize either of them, which immediately made him put up his guard mentally, and he was ready should this encounter come to blows. He's had run-ins with dropouts in the past, they had come after him before, and Issei knew it would only be a matter of time before they did it again. Excuse me, the girl said. Issei turned to make eye contact with her. She had a strange smile on her face, and she had her head tilted so her eyes were hidden by the heavy shadow of dusk. You're Hyoudou Issei-kun from Ko Academy, right? Issei. She doesn't look in shape for a fight. I don't see her trying to hide anything either. It seems like she's unarmed, and her body language isn't putting out any signs of tensing for a sneak attack. Who is this girl? Can I take this risk? This was an unforeseen problem that didn't have any direct solutions. I need to play it safe. Mo, do I know you? Can I help you with something? Issei asked. Still calm and assessing the situation, the overpass was about feet above the fairly busy highway below, with a set of staircases at both ends. His back was turned to the direction of his apartment, and this girl was blocking the direction he used to get to Ko Academy, and here he stood almost dead center of the overpass, at its peak height of approximately foot. If he attempted to jump from here, he was guaranteed to at least break his ankles if not his legs, or worse, and that was if he managed to miss all of the speeding vehicles using the roadway. The girl began, but shyly froze up. Issei, do you need me for something? Are you okay? Issei asked, trying his best to sound as genuine as he could given his circumstances. Hyoudou-kun, are you seeing anyone right now? The girl managed to ask despite her bashfulness. Issei, well, this is interesting. She's a good actor, but she's overplaying the shy part. This is obviously a ploy or scam of some sort. I didn't get to have anything interesting happen earlier because of those two idiots, so let's play along and see where this takes us. You mean besides I don't see anyone else here. Hyoudou-kun, it isn't kind to play with people's feelings. I am asking if you have a girlfriend. She began bashfully, then became loud. Issei, sorry, no, I don't have a girlfriend. Issei answered straightforwardly. Terrific. Then would you mind going out with me? She asked, finally looking up and looking Issei in the eyes. It was the first time Issei had seen someone with red eyes. He wondered if they were natural. Issei, something is definitely wrong here. I just wish I knew what. What did you just? Issei was about to ask when he was interrupted by the girl and her answer. For a while, I've watched you pass by here and Hyoudou-kun. She began to struggle to get what she wanted to say out. As she squeezed her eyes shut. Issei, no way, seriously, is she about to? Will you please be my boyfriend? She finally managed to ask after quite a bit of what appeared to be an internal struggle. Issei, I can't help but be intrigued. Let's see where this goes. Peaceful life, John. Be patient and wait for me, please. I promise you I'll come back for you. For real? Issei asked. RD person POV. The next morning, inside a studio apartment, with Issei, an alarm clock blares at and Issei wakes up and begins to get ready for the day. He does his morning workout consisting of push-ups, sit-ups, squats, a minute plank, and if he has time a kilometer run before coming back and showering and getting ready for the day. He intends to pick up breakfast on his way, as he is supposed to be meeting his girlfriend this morning to meet up with the two perverts to walk to school together. Yesterday, he had insisted that it wasn't a good idea. However, his girlfriend insisted on coming so she could meet his friends. With that in mind, he finishes getting ready and is out of the door by am. A little while later, Issei and the girl approach Matsuda and Motohama, both of whom are shocked speechless with their jaws hanging wide. It was greatly unexpected that Issei would be the one to get a girlfriend first out of the three of them, so it was a great shock to the two to see Issei walking up, side by side with a beautiful young woman. Issei, alright, guys, this is Amain Yuma-chan. Yuma, these two are the ones I told you about, Issei said, after which Yuma introduced herself. As she did this, Issei approached the two, still dumbfounded in shock. Yes, she is my Giara friend. He placed his hand on Matsuda and Motohama's shoulders and shook them a little. So, you guys hurry up and find girlfriends too. Let's go, Yuma-chan. Yuma, she replied excitedly before bowing to the two in a respectful parting, before running after Issei, who was already halfway down the block. Leaving the two to wallow in their self-pity. Motohama, that traitor. He spits out venomously with tears in his eyes, as he looks over at Matsuda, who is frozen with tears streaming down his face. Flashback. RD person POV. The evening prior, still at the overpass, Issei and Yuma stand having a conversation planning something for later that week. Issei, a date? Issei asked in surprise. He knew very little about romance, and what little he did understand was not enough to make him feel prepared for the thing that Internet Sensei called a date. Yuma, this coming Sunday. Does that not work? Yuma asked, a little dejected. Issei, I had nothing else to do, might as well fill my Sunday with something. No, that's not an issue. Of course, it's alright. Issei replied, trying to feign excitement for the upcoming date he had just now added to his schedule. Yuma, thank goodness. Well, bye, she said before turning away and running off. Issei, goodbye. Issei replied monotonously. raising his hand to wave goodbye as he watched her turn and run off. Yuma stopped after running a few steps and turned around once again, looking at Issei and saying, "I'm looking forward to our date on Sunday," before once again turning on her heel and continuing to run in the opposite direction that Issei was going. "Issei, yeah? Me too," Issei said, still waving at her as he watched her figure shrink away. His hand slowly tightened into a fist as he also spun on his heel and began walking to his small apartment. As he was walking, he passed by a figure in clothes he recognized. However, the person wearing them, Issei did not recognize. They were wearing the Ko Academy uniform and had shoulder-length white hair and golden-yellow eyes. As a precaution, he kept his eyes straight and didn't pay any attention to the look the person he walked by gave to his vanishing back. They had a popsicle in one hand that they licked before continuing their path toward Ko Academy. RD person POV, in an unknown location. "I see," someone says, as she sets a chess piece on the board in the ideal spot. Red hair flares behind her as she sits in a fancy, high-back style chair. Surely enough, President, you hunch was a light, lilted female voice begins to speak. "Right on the mark," the red-headed female finished. "It seems that I was right to have you follow and observe him." She answered curtly. Standing at attention in front of the red-haired woman was the same white-haired figure that Issei ran into on his route home after coming into contact with Yuno. "President, what shall we do?" asked a woman with her long dark hair tied into a ponytail with a ribbon. "Rias Gremory, we will set preparations," at least she said as she picked up a chess piece from the board, looking at it in her hand before placing it. However, she placed the piece onto the board. "The rest depends on him." Issei POV. That Sunday, outside a shopping mall. Sunday came around quickly. I used most of my spare time at home to have Internet Sensei teach me the bare minimum I need to know for today. I understand that we're supposed to do something together, to have fun, which is a completely subjective feeling, might I add, to eat something together, and to possibly at the end of it, though that's something I'm not nearly as confident in as in many other things. So here's to hoping it goes well, and of course I'm prepared to fight if necessary. I brought something from home that should assist me should I get into a situation where it might be necessary, though I highly doubt that will be the case today. Yuma had asked me to meet her out front of the mall, which I understood to be a local haven for people my age, though I myself have never been to one. From the outside, it looks interesting, but I can only assume the true wonder of the shopping mall comes once inside it. I looked at my watch. It was noon. She said she wanted to meet at noon, but I couldn't see her anywhere. As I look around in an attempt to spot Yuno, I see a strange woman wearing odd, I believe Motohama said something about something called cosplay once, style clothing. She looked like a succubus, but a cheap and poorly made costume. This woman had a strange smile on her face. She was holding flyers and she handed me one. I accepted it without thinking. Once I had accepted the flyer, she walked past me, quite briskly in fact. Looking at the paper she handed me, it was odd. The paper itself was the color of sun-bleached cardboard. There were multiple roses, drawn, decorating the margins of the flyer. However, what drew my attention the most was the advertisement, if you could call it that, a bold statement of white on a black banner with a nearly nude woman on one side. "Your wish will be granted." Below this banner and set dead center on the flyer was an odd symbol. It looked like a magical circle from those fantasy games I've watched people play and heard others talk about, or an alchemical circle from the times in human history before modern chemistry, the pseudoscience, and mystical art of alchemy was used in its place. Interesting, though that woman was really odd. "Yuma, Issei-kun!" she yelled, trying to get my attention. As I turned around to greet Yuma, I placed that weird flyer in my pocket. I don't want her to see that and think I'm strange. After all, I'm a perfectly average teen boy, with no outstanding qualities or features. One bad impression is all it takes to be seen as below average. "Issei, good morning, Yuma-chan," I said, turning to look at her. She was dressed in cute clothing, a black dress that cut off just above the middle of the thigh, a pink cardigan over with some cute shoes, and knee-high socks to match. "Yuma, sorry. Have you been waiting long?" she asked, worried about arriving a little later than the agreed-upon time. "Issei, I'm not going to tell her I've been here since. No, not at all. I just got here myself," I replied and watched as she breathed a sigh of relief. There it is again, I can see right through it, but I don't understand why she insists on doing this. Is this some sort of prank from a rival high school? Has my reputation gotten so bad that other schools want to try and humiliate me, or is it really something that man would do? I have to stay on guard today. Something is wrong with her. I couldn't stop myself from thinking. The two of us walked around the mall together. Eventually, we left the mall and went to an open-air shopping market with tons of small restaurants and shops. Though with the amount of people walking through, it was a bit claustrophobic. It wasn't long before Yuma pulled me by the arm into a clothing store. I'm pretty sure she had fun pulling clothes off the racks in order to make me try them on. Even if we weren't planning on buying anything, she was smiling a lot. According to Internet Sensei, when someone is smiling a lot while on a date, it means they're having fun. I wonder, will I ever smile on a date? Only time will tell. As she pulls me around some more, she finds a hair accessory that was popular in the S&S, the scrunchie I believe it was called. It was red and she put it on her wrist. I ended up buying that scrunchie, as it was both within my limited budget and seemed like something she enjoyed. Not long after that wild run, through clothes and accessories galore, we found ourselves in a cafe enjoying some cold treats on a warm, spring Sunday. I find myself enjoying a nice handmade soda after enjoying my scoop of vanilla ice cream. Across the table from me is Yuma, enjoying a multi-layered sundae with fruit and whipped cream toppings. It looks good, and honestly, I might just do what Internet Sensei says is for dedicated couples only and steal some of her sundae. It's as I find myself contemplating this that I stare directly at her sundae. Yuma, exposing her cleavage behind the sundae. Is something the matter, Issei-kun? She asked, leaning closer to Issei. Issei, oh no. Nothing's wrong. How is your sundae? I asked, trying to keep my cool. She almost busted me. I almost got caught, and she knows that I know that she almost caught me. I was so close to getting a bit of that sundae for myself. Yuma, it's amazing, Issei-kun, thank you, she said, while smiling happily. RD person POV. Later that evening, as Issei and Yuma are walking around a local park, the water fountain is one of the few things that can be heard in the vicinity. The couple continues their walk around and Yuno starts to walk closer and closer beside Issei. Yuma comes so close to Issei that while walking, just the natural swing of Issei's arm is enough to brush his hand up against hers. Issei makes a note of this and gets ready for something to occur. Either what Internet Sensei said is true, and he may be walking away from this a changed man, according to Matsuda and Motohama, or his intuition was correct and he really will have to fight. To be truthful, Issei didn't know which one he hoped for. In fact, he really didn't want either, as he didn't actually want to do any of this, but he was here, and he would, either way. As Issei and Yuma's hands passed each other again, Yuma grabbed Issei's hand and entwined it with hers. As they walked closer to the fountain in the middle of the park, Issei began to feel something wrong about to happen. He would have to rely on his adaptability here. Soon his intuitive guesses were realized when Yuno let go of his hand and skipped towards the fountain before turning back to face him. Issei realized it was around the same time as their first meeting. However, the park seemed so dark and empty. It seemed as though there wasn't anyone here but the two of them. Yuma, listen, Issei-kun, to commemorate our first date, would you do something for me? Yuma stepped away from the fountain as she spoke, stepping closer and closer. With each word she closed the distance between Issei and her. Issei, what is it? Issei asked, curious. He had pinched his cheeks while Yuma's back was turned, so, even if fake, there was a small blush on his cheeks. Here it comes, the moment where it all crystallizes. Check in. No, Yuma. With a smirk on her face, would you die for me? Her eyes darkening and her smirk growing more sinister. Issei, I knew it. Everything is going according to plan. I just have to continue to feign ignorance until the gamble I made pays off. Sorry, did you? Yuma, sorry, I think I misheard you. Could you say that again for me? I think something is wrong with my ears. Issei struggled through his sentence, shocked at what Yuma had said to him. Yuma. In response, Yuma got close to Issei's ear, resting her chin on his shoulder for added effect. Would you die for me? Before pushing away and beginning her transformation. As she transforms, her focus leaves Issei for a moment, and he slips his phone out of his pocket at an angle to capture what is occurring in front of him. His phone, which has been recording since the ice cream stop 2 hours ago, is set to capture Yuma's transformation into whatever it is that she is. As she finishes her transformation and stands in front of Issei, Issei backs away slowly, before tripping onto his ass on the ground. Yuma stands in front of Issei, her black wings exposed to his view, causing him quite a shock. This was not what he was expecting. He was expecting another defect sent after him, but this was something entirely different. He wondered if it had something to do with what he learned during his first month at Ko. Issei, huh? Was I wrong? No, what the hell is this? Is she one of those? Issei began to analyze her appearance: dark black feathered wings, dark leather clothing, and cat-like pupils. During his analysis, he accidentally let one word slip out. Wings, he asked. Ryanair, it's been fun, hanging around with you for this short time. Playing along with your aloof, uncaring nature. Yuma said. She lifted her arm that wore the scrunchie Issei had purchased. I will treasure this little thing you bought me. And so Yuma raised her arm in front of her as a spear of light formed in her hand. Issei watched as this occurred. He had no real plan for what to do next, however. If there was one thing he was good at, it was winning. As such, this would just be another inevitable victory for him, whether Yuma knew it or not. At this point Issei stood up and pulled out the simple knife he brought from home, close to a K-bar, but not nearly as big. Yuma watched with piqued interest, however she knew this human would be no match for her. Yuma watched Issei carefully as he began his assault. He was fast, exceptionally fast for a human, but a human is no match. Issei had managed to get a good few strikes in on Yuma, including a few knife wounds, but even for him, that light spear was too fast and nearly impossible to dodge. In the end, Issei was stabbed in the torso by a spear made of pure light. After being run through, the spear disappears into nothingness, leaving only a hole in Issei's abdomen. This still fatal injury, not nearly as bad as it would have been if the attack hit its intended mark, begins to pour blood down Issei's front and back, as he silently looks to Yuma for some sort of answer as to why. Ryanair, I'm sorry, but you were too big of a threat to us, so I had to dispose of you right away. If you had to blame anyone, I suppose blame God for having that sacred gear dwell within you, she said with a sad smile. Issei, sacred what do you mean? Issei thought as he began to fall backward, laying on his back and looking up at the now darkening sky glistening with the twinkling of the first stars of the night sky. Ryanair, thank you for the pleasant memories, goodbye, she says with a smile as she begins to soar into the air and away from the bleeding body of a slowly dying teenage boy. Issei, is this real? Am I really dying in some two-bit park, over something I didn't want to get involved in? If you were gonna kill me, couldn't you have at least promised to kill that man as well? I finally got a chance to be free, and this is what it amounts to, ending so quickly. Issei then lifts up his hand and looks at it, his eyes widening. Absolute scarlet red, like her hair is even more crimson than strawberry blonde. Just like the color running down my hand, something strange happens. Issei's body vibrates before a large red circle appears around him. What am I doing? I just wanted to be free. A second portion of a magical circle forms behind Issei. I wanted to be a normal human being, an average human being. Another portion of the magical circle forms behind Issei. He has a fleeting moment where he has a wish, the first one Issei had ever had, one that might not work, might be a waste. But I wish I could play chess against Rias Senpai before I die. After completing his wish, Issei watches with what little life is left in his body and eyes, as a magical circle forms above him. From the magical circle appears a girl with crimson hair. As she stands just outside of Issei's field of vision, she speaks. Crimson-haired girl, you're the one who summoned me, right? The young woman with crimson hair speaks. Her voice is commanding but familiar to Issei. Issei, huh? Who is that? He thinks, as his vision begins to slip away. Crimson-haired girl, since you're dying anyway, I'll take you in. As she says this, a pair of bat-like wings unfurl from her back. Issei's eyes widen as he sees something like this for the second time in a day, and the first time was an entity that tried to kill him and is currently about to succeed. Wings, what's with that again? Crimson-haired girl, you will live for my sake, she said with a smile, her eyes glinting mischievously. Issei, I see. So that's how it is. Throw away my freedom to protect my freedom. Within a small apartment, a small television set in the corner plays the local news, as an alarm clock rings signaling the beginning of the morning for one brown-haired, blank-faced young man. He sits up with a start, as he recalls some of the events of the previous night. Though still a blur, the realization that he did, indeed, die, but is now in his bed as though nothing happened makes him both curious and annoyed at the prospect of even more variables being added to his not-so-peaceful life. John Issei Hyoudou, a second-year student at Private Academy, begins his morning routine, with no time to take a run today, as he had spent quite a while in front of the mirror, checking over himself to make sure that he was, indeed, alive, and to see if that weapon that Yuma struck him with had marked his skin with a scar of some sort. He was disappointed when he found no such proof, making things more difficult for him to comprehend. It made him wonder if it had all been a weird dream. Issei checked his phone and found it lacked both Yuma's number and their conversations via text. He continued to search through his phone for the proof, when he remembered the recording. He searched through his phone until he found something, not what he wanted, but proof. A picture of himself alongside a young woman wearing a red uniform with long black hair and red eyes. He should also have the audio recording from last night. He would just have to check the clothes he wore yesterday when he gets home after school. Issei, so something, obviously, happened to my phone. There's no reason for this to have occurred. Someone went onto my phone to clear its information. If they went to such lengths as to break into my personal phone, to wipe away evidence of my encounter last night, what other lengths would they go to, in order to keep that event a secret from the public? Thinking back on it, what Yuma did last night was extremely odd, that weird transformation and light spear. What all is going on, and what does Rias Gremory have to do with it? Thankfully I don't have any compromising information on this, so I should be in the clear. Issei thought to himself, as he tossed his phone aside to have breakfast. As he moved to get up, he noticed the television on. I don't remember watching television last night, nor would I leave it on while I sleep. That's odd too. Did someone come into my house as well? I don't remember getting home, so it's possible. Tonight I'll have to check the apartment for audio bugs. I would prefer not to have my privacy invaded. After finishing breakfast, he starts his route to earlier than normal, stopping to speak with neighbors and pedestrians about the evening before. Each person he spoke to gave him uninteresting details and information. Nobody mentioned anything about something like what happened last night. He knew it must have been loud, and the park they had gone to was in a residential area, surrounded by homes and apartment complexes. He intentionally passed by the park he and Yuma went to the night prior, where he looked around and couldn't find any bloodstains or proof of his injury or death. He did find, however, a scorched patch of grass, exactly where the light spear had hit the ground after piercing him through. People around, however, seemed to ignore that patch as if it didn't exist. This is getting too strange for Issei to care about. The sooner he gets to relax and let it all blow over, the better, but first, he needs to confirm his theory. Peaceful life John must wait a little longer, but Issei Hyoudou is definitely on his way. Later that morning, inside Academy, Issei understood a few things on his way to school this morning and had already formulated a few theories surrounding the information he had procured. Someone or something out there has superhuman, supernatural abilities. It must also be something limited to a small delegation of individuals. Because if not, there would have been reports about this long ago, with many people speaking about it in passing. If this information was common knowledge, he would have learned about its existence long ago. The individuals that possess these supernatural abilities can, and likely due to some sort of rule or code of ethics, must hide themselves amongst normal humans, as it would cause panic amongst the normal human populace. His reasoning: those living around the park itself hadn't noticed anything out of the ordinary last night when he asked them, meaning that those with these abilities must also be capable of interfering and preventing normal humans from uncovering these mysteries. Likely the reason his privacy had been violated, so this secret supernatural society can keep that information secure, especially from the likes of your normal, average teenage boy who knows what he might do with that information. After all, these individuals with abilities have some sort of interest in him. The date yesterday, the odd flyer he had been handed, which she handed to nobody else in the area, his phone being broken into. If this interest in him were to continue, it might put his plans for a peaceful life in danger, which he would never allow to happen. If these people were going to pose a threat, he would remove it, just as he always had. He had no intention of getting involved in this nonsense. If they wanted him, they would have to come and take him, and he had no plans of making it easy for them to do so. Issei wanted to run a test to see if his theories were correct. To do this, he would use the first two tools he had acquired in Ko Academy, the Pervert duo. He was certain that if these supernatural beings truly did exist, those two were not one of them. If he asked them about Yuma outright, it might cause issues for him should he be overheard, so he needed to be subtle. Though the way he planned to do it might bring him unwanted attention, should he be wrong about any of his three main theories, though he doubted he was. After a few minutes of searching, he finds the duo, sitting on a staircase near one of the main hallways of the school building. Issei, Matsuda, Motohama, how's it going? Issei calls to the two perverts as they hang out in a stairwell, doing who knows what. Say, so did you guys have any luck getting a girlfriend yet? I know I have. Issei had approached the duo and slung his arms over their shoulders. Matsuda huffed. What do you mean, Hayato Issei-kun, you don't have a girlfriend? Matsuda looked at Issei indignantly. I mean, there's absolutely no way you could have one. Motohama, if you're talking about one of the Kendo Club members who tends to beat you up, then sure if you say so, but Issei-kun, you won't get ahead of us. Motohama said, confirming Issei's suspicions. So what's her name? Issei-kun. Issei, Yuma. I brought her to meet you guys last Friday on the way to school, Issei responded, paying close attention to their reaction to that name. If they had a connection to the supernatural, he was sure they would give a response to that name. If they didn't and responded to his question with naivete or ignorance, Issei could be sure that they were not a part of the supernatural and that somehow, these supernaturals, as he chose to dub them, both have the capability to and manage to alter the memories of the duo, likely the rest of the local human populace, excluding him for some unknown reason. Issei received his answer when both looked at him confused before answering. Matsuda, Yuma, I've never heard of her. Plus, you've never introduced us to anyone named Yuma. I don't know anything about her, Matsuda replied lazily, hands behind his head as he leaned against the wall of the stairwell. Motohama, I'll say it again for you, Issei-kun, you never introduced us to anyone named Yuma. Besides, you can't get a girlfriend, it's impossible. Motohama added on to Matsuda's statement, sitting on the stairwell, looking up at Issei confused and a little irritated. Issei had one last plan in mind to truly confirm. As he pulled out his phone and began scrolling for the picture of him and Yuma, he couldn't find it. He was sure it was there when he left his house this morning and when he got to Ko Academy. So when could anyone have? Issei stopped himself in his thoughts, as he felt himself being watched. Looking around quickly, he spots the person watching him, a girl with crimson hair and blue eyes staring down at him, as he stares back from the staircase flight below her. As he looks away from the duo and up to her, he locks eyes with her for a few moments. Before long, Matsuda notices her presence as well. Matsuda, oh, it's Rias senpai, he stated matter-of-factly as she began to make her way to the staircase. Motohama, who hadn't noticed her presence until it had been pointed out by Matsuda, quickly stands up and looks to where Rias Gremory is making her way down the flight of stairs towards Issei and the Pervert duo. For real, random female students. Rias senpai, Gremory-san, it's Rias senpai, she's so stunning. Rias continues to make her way down the stairs, passing the trio. As she passes, she locks eyes once again with Issei, continuing to watch him from the corner of her eye. Once she passes him, she flashes him a small, subtle smirk before continuing on her way down the stairs. Issei, Rias Gremory, one of the two queens of Ko, the president of the Occult Research Club, and younger sister to a man named Sensei Gremory, someone who, despite not being enrolled at Ko Academy, is known to be the Oni-sama of the school. Despite her holding such a social position and status, she seems to show an unreasonable interest in me. I dislike that. She is one of my primary suspects for one of these supernaturals. Beyond this, there is of course what happened last night. I'm almost certain it was her who arrived at the park before I lost consciousness. You will live only for me. Those words ring in my head like an alarm the more I think about this. Truly troublesome. It will be unfortunate to have to dispose of someone so publicly liked. Heed my warning, Rias Gremory. I want no part in your world or game. I seek nothing from you and you should seek nothing from me, as there is nothing for either side to offer in exchange. Should you continue on the path you walk, I assure you, destruction will find you and rip you from your seat, and I will show no mercy for you when I destroy your very essence from the face of history. I assure you that, in the end, I am going to win. Issei watches as Rias Gremory walks away from him and the other two. Keeping a close eye on her would be a must for Issei, especially if she was a threat to his free and peaceful life. Matsuda, man, she really is a beauty, after all. Matsuda said to the other two dreamily. Motohama, indeed. There is just something about that elegance that makes her unapproachable. He agreed, in his own weird and perverse way. Issei just continues to watch as she walks away, ignoring the duo's comments about her. It isn't until Matsuda approaches him and slings an arm around his shoulder, whispering into his ear, Matsuda. Oh, why are you watching Rias-senpai so closely? Haida Issei-kun, could it be that you've gotten hopped up on one too many porno fantasies and it's begun to mess with your brain? Matsuda asks Issei with a shit-eating smirk on his face. Issei, hey, don't lump me in with you, alright? Besides, Issei was about to continue but was interrupted by Matsuda. Matsuda, yeah, you've got that Yuma-chan girl now, don't you? Anyways, why don't you come by my house later? After school we can get together, the three of us, and watch my treasured collection of porn DVDs. Matsuda shouted, right as two female classmates, specifically Kendo Club members, were descending the stairs behind him, and heard everything he just said, much to Issei's dismay. Brown ponytail Kendo Club member, ew, it's those three. Ginger Kendo Club member, always thinking and talking about that filthy stuff. Both girls, lowlifes, perverts. The statements from both girls, while factual, clearly hurt the two perverts, and even kinda made Issei feel bad. Though realistically, he wasn't what they painted him to be. It's been useful for maintaining his peaceful life, at least, it was, until recent events. Matsuda cleared his throat to swallow the pain of the Kendo Club's insults, leaning in and putting a hand up to block the conversation from others. Or rather, I've gotten the newest Gentleman's Disc release. Motohama, oh, that's fantastic, he proclaimed, excited about this new porno Matsuda had managed to acquire. While the two were engaging in their discussions, Issei once again found himself drifting into thought, as he could swear that he could still hear the conversation of the Kendo Club members, all the way at the end of the hall. Issei had always had good hearing, but never this good. It was disorienting at first, but Issei decided to ignore it for the time being. Issei, what was that? Issei asked, quietly, to himself more than anyone else around him. RD person POV. Later that afternoon, inside Matsuda's bedroom, the television was playing a strange, overly erotic cartoon as the three sat around the television. Issei finds himself distracted, thinking about the odd, overly sensitive hearing he had been experiencing all afternoon. The two perverts watched the cartoon with overt attention and in odd sitting positions, claiming it to be due to a manly pain they were experiencing. Issei didn't understand, and he was pretty sure he didn't want to understand what the two were talking about. Motohama, oh, this is Momo-chan's latest video, Kamen Rider, Pinky. Motohama exclaimed excitedly, leaning closer to the television to get a better look. Matsuda, crossing his arms and grinning, he said proudly, I had to jump through a few hoops to get this one. Issei, this is really strange, my hearing has never been affected like this. It's starting to get a little annoying, to be honest. Plus, I'm wasting my time here, when I have things at home that need to be taken care of, and I want to listen to that audio recording I should have. I can't remember clearly what that woman was saying to me. After she stabbed me, my mind went fuzzy and got really cloudy. It truly felt like it could have been a dream, and I'm sure that if I were anyone else, I would assume it to be so, just as easily. However, I am not so easily convinced. You supernaturals will have to put in more effort to fool me. Issei stared off into space, paying no attention to the now more vile and blatantly UAL content being shown on the television, trying to reason with himself the events of this last week. Matsuda, hey, what's wrong with you, Issei-kun? Why aren't you appreciating the art I'm showing to you? Matsuda asked, trying his best to get Issei to watch the porno he had put on for them. Is the mood not right? Motohama, I know, I'll shut off the lights. That'll give us a better atmosphere. Motohama said, not necessarily paying attention to Issei, as his full energy and focus was on the images in front of him. Motohama got up for a moment to turn out the lights before returning to his spot, mere inches away from the screen. After Motohama turned out the lights, the two began paying close attention to the television again, commentating and narrating what happened in a strange and vulgar way. For Issei, however, the room was still as bright as it had been. Though a more red hue filled his vision, he could still see perfectly fine. It felt the same as earlier with his hearing. Confused and concerned this strange oversensitivity is happening to him again, Issei decided to make a mention of it this time. Issei, hey, they aren't off, he said calmly, while skeptical. Motohama, huh, what did you say? Motohama turned around to ask Issei, confused what he meant by that. As he had just turned off the light, both he and Matsuda realized they were off. Issei, the lights in the room, they aren't off. Issei repeated what he said, this time clearer with the meaning behind his words. Perhaps he hadn't been clear enough the first time. Matsuda, huh? What are you talking about? Matsuda turned his attention away from his beloved entertainment and looked at his friend, Issei, in confusion. Was this Issei's idea of a prank? Matsuda thought to himself. Issei, no, I'm wrong, the lights are off in the room. So what is this? I don't sense any light in here, but I can see it. I can see it. Issei brought his hand to his head. This was getting too frustratingly confusing for him. He needed air to get away from these two and that godforsaken show they were watching. Sorry, he said, standing up and grabbing his bag. I'm going home. I'm not feeling very well. Matsuda, no, all right. I hope you feel better soon. Hi to Issei-kun. Matsuda said in farewell to his departing friend. A few minutes later, somewhere in Ko City, Issei was walking home after leaving Matsuda's home. The world around him had a strange atmosphere to it. Though it was getting dark, Issei could still see perfectly fine, as though it were the middle of the day. He found himself walking past what would usually be an empty alleyway, only to look and find it emanating an eerie red glow. Issei had made the decision to continue moving. The world was beginning to take on the same reddish hue that was present in Matsuda's room. Beyond the odd newfound sensitivities, Issei could also feel something welling up inside him. Issei knew he was a strong and relatively powerful individual, but this feeling was new, almost foreign. It was almost getting him excited. Down the street, near a convenience store, a mother and daughter argue, catching Issei's attention. Normally, he would overlook this, however. He could hear the entire argument clearly, not only the child throwing a temper tantrum. Clearly and perfectly, as if it were happening right beside him. Issei, again with this, how is it possible to hear them so clearly even though they're so far away? Issei turned on his heels and started making his way home with haste. It was as he was reaching the park that he went on the date with Yuma, that his cell phone began to ring. He slowed down for a moment, stopping near a fountain to take the call as he recognized the number. Hello, Ayanokōji, Issei-kun. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. A male voice spoke through the speaker of the smartphone up to Issei's sensitive ears. Issei. Hello, Chairman Sakayanagi. It's good to hear your voice again. I'm happy you're safe still, and please, refer to me as Hi to Issei, if you wouldn't mind. Issei replied, a little annoyed at having to repeat that request to Chairman Sakayanagi, as he had requested the same the last time they spoke, 2 months ago, when Chairman Sakayanagi assisted him with his enrollment into Ko Private Academy. The chairman was obviously upset that Issei chose not to attend his school in Tokyo, ANHS, as was offered and earned. But the chairman understood Issei's reasoning, even agreeing to enroll a fake student under his name to assist in hiding from that man. Chairman Sakayanagi, my apologies, Issei-kun. Old habits, I suppose. Now, on to the business at hand, and the reason I called you. We recently had 2 new students enter our school, students who have graduated from that place. I wanted to reach out to you and provide you with a warning. I believe that man is already making moves in an attempt to have you return to him. Be safe, Issei-kun. I hope you are enjoying a peaceful life in Ko. Hopefully, we will be able to see each other again soon. My daughter would love an opportunity to meet with you face to face. The chairman's voice on the other side of the call remained calm and even, However, Issei could tell the chairman was warning him of an underlying, approaching threat. Encroaching on him quickly, threatening to take his freedom away. The chairman's warning caused Issei's eyebrows to rise in interest. Issei, other graduates, likely from one of the newer generations. While that is both concerning and interesting, I have no reason to be concerned after all. No matter what, none of the other children, even if they had received the same training and education, will ever match me, much less pose a threat to me. Issei thought to himself. He then answered the chairman, "Thank you for the warning, Chairman. I will be sure to secure myself even better than I already have. And speaking of Arisu, tell her I'm willing to sit down and play a game once our high school careers have ended." It was then that Issei, standing beside the same fountain where he had almost been murdered just the day before, felt a presence in the area, a possible threat. Getting on guard, he spoke to the chairman once more before hanging up the call. "Apologies, Chairman, but something just came up. I'll have to let you go. I'll talk to you at another time when it's convenient for both you and I. Goodbye, Chairman, until we speak again." After hanging up the call, Issei looked toward the figure who he had sensed just a moment ago. As Issei looks, he sees a male figure in fancy dress, a long blue doublet overcoat reaching to his knees, black slacks with equally black loafers, a white button-up shirt, and a black trilby/fedora hat. After Issei looked toward the man in fancy clothes began slowly making his way towards Issei, while he began talking. "How truly unfortunate here I am, running into someone like you, in a provincial town like this one." The man stops walking and looks up at Issei. Issei, out of shock or out of pain, he isn't sure, but Issei jumps backward. As he jumps, he feels as though he's floating, clearing the fountain and putting more room between him and this unknown assailant. "What was that? I wanted to jump, but not this far. Also, I've never jumped this far before. What's going on? Shrinking away, are we?" the man said tauntingly. "Issei, I don't even understand what's going on," Issei shouted as he began to run away from this strange figure. Looking up at the sky, Issei noticed it swirling with odd colors and patterns, definitely not natural phenomena in the sky. Something weird is going on here again, Issei thought as he ran. While running and avoiding trees and other natural obstacles, the sight of black feathers falling around him took his attention away for a moment. Issei looked up and saw the man flying overhead with black wings beating behind him to keep him in the air. Suddenly, the man landed in front of Issei, blocking his path forward. Issei, surprised by his sudden appearance, steps back and assumes a basic yet open fighting stance. "This is why I can't stand lower-class beings," the man speaks, condescendingly looking at Issei from under the brim of his hat. "Issei, really again?" Issei stated, unenthusiastically. This caused the man to become a little irritated at the lack of fear or awe present in Issei. Your master and friends are nowhere to be found. Nor are you showing any signs of disappearing, nor are any magical circles being deployed. Therefore, my analysis of the situation is that you are astray," the man stated matter-of-factly, before reaching his hand to the side and a light spear formed within it. Issei, master disappearing and magical circles stray. I assume he's speaking about things related to supernaturals, but the phrasing makes it frustratingly confusing. At least he's talking to me, unlike Yuma, Issei thought to himself as the man was speaking, rapidly analyzing his situation along with attempting to comprehend the nonsense being spouted by this dark-winged man when he sees him summon a light spear. "I had so much trouble with that thing last time. But this time, I know its properties." The man grabs the light spear and readies it to attack Issei, in which case, killing you will create no problems. The man throws the light spear at Issei. Issei, ready for the throw, launches his bag at the man's face just before the man throws the spear, causing its trajectory to be off and missing Issei completely. Issei, using the distraction and the missed attack, rushes towards his assailant, grabbing his hat and pulling it further over his face, then slapping both hands over the winged man's ears, causing him to become disoriented. After stunning his enemy, Issei then struck the man quickly in the solar plexus, knocking the wind out of the winged man, before grabbing the man's coat and spinning the two of them around, so that Issei was standing behind the winged man. As the man attempted to get his bearings back, Issei punched him at the base of his skull with about % of his total potential force. On a normal opponent, this would have knocked them out at the least and killed them at the most extreme. However, this man simply took the hit and stepped forward, before spinning on his heel while simultaneously summoning a light spear swinging down on the place where Issei had just been. Had Issei not sidestepped when he did, there was no doubt in his mind that he would have been impaled, if not bisected. Issei, using his opponent's arm overextension from the wild, haphazard swing of his weapon of light, grabbed his arm on both sides of his elbow, before pulling the arm towards his knee, as his knee rose to strike the elbow joint. The two appendages connected with a sickening snap, as the man screamed and beat his wings to leave the ground, and the human who had managed to injure him so severely. The winged man took a look at the sorry state of his arm, specifically his elbow, bent the wrong way, and a bone in his forearm had broken and was now protruding from the skin, causing him to bleed profusely. Issei used this opportunity, where his assailant had left him to his own devices on the ground, to grab a rock he could find on the ground with a decent point to it, before looking back up at the winged man, flying in the sky, staring at him angrily, arm hanging limply by his side. In a fit of pain-induced rage, the winged man streaks down towards the ground, directly at Issei, with a light spear in hand and ready to attack. Issei saw this and readied himself for his counterattack, finding a nearby tree to use. Determined and decided, having calculated the best course of action, Issei began to run towards the tree his eyes had landed on, away from the man attempting to kill him. Issei managed to reach the tree just before the man reached him. Using the tree trunk as a footplant, Issei threw himself over the man, causing Issei's attacker's eyes to widen in surprise. He was moving too fast to avoid crashing directly into the tree. This filth, did he lure me into a trap and dodge my attack? The winged man realized far too late to change and correct course. Issei, reaching his hand containing the pointy rock down as he jumped, successfully jamming the sharp rock into one of the winged man's wide eye sockets, destroying the eye inside, and leaving the sharp rock stuck in his face. The unfortunate trade-off of successfully landing this blow, however, meant Issei was grazed by his light spear. Falling to the ground in sharp, acute pain, Issei grabbed onto the spot in his shoulder where the spear had hit. It seared with a burning sensation that Issei couldn't describe. Even the pain-tolerance sessions he had endured in that place was mild compared to this feeling. Issei, this hurts so much worse than Yuma's. Why? He said out loud, still maintaining his plain, bland face, falling to his knees as he grabbed onto the wound, only causing him more pain, making him wince and draw in short breaths from the pain. It hurts, doesn't it, you filthy bastard? Light is like a poison to your kind. I thought I would have easily finished you off, but look at me. What you did to me, and look at you. I thought I finished you off, but you're much stronger and more skilled than you look, I suppose? It's been a long time since I've had a battle like this. Oh, you're still conscious, don't worry. I'll put you out of your misery soon enough, the man said, walking closer to an injured and downed Issei. Blood leaking down one side of his face from the ruptured eyeball, his destroyed arm hanging limply by his side, swinging loose and probably excruciatingly painfully. The absolute, unbridled rage in his voice betrayed the praising sentiment of his words. He once again summons the light spear to his remaining, functioning hand as he approaches Issei's position. Issei, damn it, it's no good. I can't move, the shock of the pain has caused my legs to lock up. I can't move to even try and defend myself. Why does this hurt so much, and what does he mean, you're kind? Damn it, I need help, or I'm going to die here. Again, Issei gritted his teeth, looking at the winged man in his remaining functional eye. POV. Cold, unchanging, uncaring, unflinching, and horrifying. These were the words he would use to describe the golden orbs that stared at him as he approached, causing him to freeze. There was something truly horrifying about the gaze that the boy was able to give to him, the advancing threat who posed a very real threat to the boy's life. Even as a fallen angel, he hadn't experienced or witnessed this level of darkness in a living being, much less a human. The man found himself drowning in darkness. The boy's eyes, almost shining on their own, burned with a cold, calculating, analyzing stare that bore right into the depths of the winged man's being. He felt hypnotized. There was nowhere else to look but those cold, soulless eyes, the very things keeping him trapped in this endless, Heavy abyss were those same eyes, the only thing he could look at in this monstrous void. RD person POV. The winged man stood frozen, entranced, so much so that he was completely unaware when a magical circle opened up off to his side, near the kneeling boy. What are you? The winged man began to ask Issei, only to be interrupted by something hitting him in the chest. He looked back down at the struggling teenager on the ground. That wasn't caused by you. Then he looked off to the side to see a magical circle near, but still a decent distance, from the kneeling Issei. Issei, following his line of sight, masked the darkness in his eyes when he saw a familiar red glow. Keep your hands off of him, commanded a female voice. Issei recognized this voice. Issei tried to focus his vision, which had blurred due to the pain in his shoulder. Issei's heart rate was starting to slow and his hearing was beginning to muffle, almost like submerging underwater while being spoken to. Issei was losing a lot of blood from the wound in his shoulder. Taking a better look at it, it was deeper than Issei had originally thought. The voice belonged to a girl with crimson hair, wearing a familiar uniform, Co-Academy's female uniform. Issei, that hair. Issei mumbled quietly, doing his best to remain conscious. It's Rias senpai. At that point, Issei collapsed from the shock, caused by the pain from the injury to his shoulder. Rias had arrived using some sort of magical circle. Who do you think you are? Enraged, the winged man asked Rias, who had just arrived and was likely the one who attacked him while he was in that hell's cape of that boy's design. Summoning another light spear and throwing it at the young, crimson-haired woman, only for his attack to be blocked and kicked away by a short, petite girl also wearing Co-Academy's uniform, who had white hair and a black, cat-styled ornament in her hair. The white-haired girl stood up, beside Rias, who hadn't answered yet. TSK. Why, you? The winged man began to prepare to charge and attack, readying the light spear after it returned to his hand. Still heavily injured and bleeding from his encounter with the human Issei, the winged man is unable to see the electrical attack sent at him by an unknown assailant. As he is sent flying backward, his body tensing up from the residual shock within his body, a third individual, a young woman with black hair tied in a ponytail with a ribbon, who, like the other three, is wearing a Co-Academy female uniform, electricity crackling down her arm and sparking in her palm. Red hair. I see. You must be a member of the House of Gremory. The winged man, recovering himself after the surprise electrical shock, stated out loud, seeking confirmation of his suspicion. Rias Gremory. I am Rias Gremory. How are you this evening, my dear fallen angel? You look worse for wear. Don't tell me this is the result of one of the weakest attacks in my arsenal. Fallen angel. Well, imagine that. This town is under the control, the fallen angel said, as he stood up and began dusting himself off, of the next head of the Gremory house. The fallen angel then looked at the nearly unconscious and bleeding Issei. Is he one of your household? He asked Rias while keeping his remaining eye fixed on the boy, there on the ground, blood slowly pooling around his torso and head. Rias Gremory, bring any harm to him, and you will receive no mercy. Rias stated, answering his question and threatening him with the same breath, without batting an eye. Fallen angel. Well then, apologies for today's situation and misunderstanding, the fallen angel said, looking away, but be sure you don't let your servants wander and run off, or get loose. Otherwise. He looked at Rias with his remaining, functioning eye, seething with rage. Someone like me might hunt him while out on a stroll. Rias Gremory, I appreciate the advice, Rias replied, unfazed by the barely veiled threat, and for my part, if something like this happens again, I will not hesitate to start something larger. Rias looked at the fallen angel with a serious and dangerous aura surrounding her. Bear that in mind, Rias finished, returning with a threat of her own in answer to the fallen angel's crass statement. Fallen angel, I could say the same to you, he said, taking a similar tone to Rias, future head of House Gremory. The fallen angel then spread his wings and took flight. My name is Don Hasik. I pray that we never meet one another again. Don Hasik flies away, causing the weird sky to disappear, revealing the normal night sky above, cloudy with stars shining through. Leaving the female trio of Co-Academy students and an injured, unconscious Issei Hyoudou, alone in the empty park. The three girls surround the unconscious and bleeding Issei. Looking at his condition, one of them speaks. That was careless. Who would have thought he would run into a fallen angel? One of the female trio spoke. He'll die unless we do something soon, though that wound isn't fatal. He's losing a lot of blood and fast, said a soft, petite voice. Rias Gremory, kneeling at Issei's head, Rias replied to her two companions, I won't let him die after all. This boy is my RD person POV. The next morning, inside Issei Hyoudo's studio apartment, the alarm clock blares, letting Issei know it's time for him to get up. Again, he wakes up feeling confused and with a cloudy mind. The events of last night not only seem like a blur but make even less sense than the night before. If these are, in fact, dreams, which Issei still highly doubted, then he wished they would stop and he could go back to his normal, peaceful dreamless nights. Issei turns off the alarm and sits up in bed. Issei stretches his back, listening to the popping of stiff vertebrae, without an injury or pain in his shoulder. The blanket then falls off his lower half to reveal nothing covering his lower portion. Had he slept, Issei didn't remember taking off his clothes, nor did he remember enjoying sleeping in the nude, so this was a strange situation he found himself in. Issei then got out of bed and went to go put some clothes on when he noticed a rather strange, lumpy deformation to the comforter on his bed, right beside where Issei just got up from. Pulling back the covers revealed something that Issei, in his years of life, did not expect to see. A woman sleeping soundly in his bed, right beside where he was just sleeping. They were both nude in the same bed together. Does that mean? No. Right, there's no way that could have happened. Especially not between him and Rias Gremory. As Issei loses himself in his train of thought, Rias Gremory begins to stir after having her body exposed to the room's cool air. Issei quickly throws on a pair of gym shorts and sits in his desk chair, facing the bed, but looking out the window. As Rias sits up, she mutters to herself groggily, Rias Gremory, it's morning already. She yawns and lets out a moan as she stretches. Her eyes fall on Issei, sitting in the desk chair, shirtless, but with something covering his nether regions, at least. His upper body and torso are revealed to Rias. Well-toned and muscular, though his physique gets hidden under the clothes he chooses to wear, and the style in which he wears his school uniform. Without a shirt on, Rias can see everything, and her mind runs a little wild at the prospect. However, snapping out of it, there's something she needs to talk about with her kohai, Issei Hyoudou. Good morning! She greets Issei cheerily, smiling at him, though he isn't looking at her. Issei, good morning, Gremory-senpai. While I can appreciate the experience of waking up next to a woman such as yourself, would you please cover yourself so we can have a conversation? Please, unless this is, of course, a dream, Issei responded, without looking away from the window, as he found a pair of birds he wanted to watch flying around freely, as well as not wanting to look at the nude woman sitting on his bed. Issei threw in the dream statement to test what Rias would do, whether she would come clean and admit to knowing something, or if she would play into the lie they were using to attempt to manipulate his perception of events. Rias Gremory. Rias let out a small giggle, before shifting herself to sit on the bed with one of her knees pulled up to her chest. She looked at Issei with a smile and said, This is real, and so is everything else you've experienced up until now. I am Rias Gremory. Issei, devil, right? Issei said nonchalantly, as if he knew the entire time he had been around her. He calmly turned his chair to face her, where his golden eyes looked only into her blue ones, not requesting or needing an answer, as he had already hypothesized this. The shock made it clear that his hypothesis was correct, evident when her eyes widened slowly. And can I also assume that you serve the role as my master, Gremory-senpai? Issei asked, again fairly sure of the answer already. However, he wanted to confirm his suspicions, specifically with a confession from her. His phone was already recording. Before she woke up, their entire conversation so far had been recorded secretly by Issei. Rias Gremory. Rias didn't like what she saw in Hyoudo's eyes. She couldn't place her finger on it, but it was a haunting feeling, one that she didn't get very often and had learned to never ignore. Rias didn't want to admit it, but Issei Hyoudou was likely a very dangerous individual, regardless of the world he found himself in, supernatural or human. Trying to hide her shock as best as she could, she answered Issei's questions. Yes, I am a devil, and yes, you are correct. I am indeed your master. It's nice to meet you, Hyoudou Issei-kun. Rias finished with a smile. Inside Issei's apartment, Rias sat on Issei's bed, still nude, smiling at the young man sitting in the desk chair but feet away from her. The smile on her face was an attempt to hide the discomfort she felt with being found out, not revealing herself to this human. Issei, still seated on the desk chair, turns to continue looking out the window. His face was unreadable, something Rias didn't like either. This boy truly seemed like a purely blank slate. A white sheet of paper had more character and personality than him. Rias, expecting some sort of answer, sat as proudly as she could for someone who was not being acknowledged as a superior. In an attempt to draw his attention, Rias opened and then crossed her leg over her thigh as a seductive measure. Issei sat on the chair, trying to rationalize with himself what Rias Gremory was doing here with him, especially nude. Looking away from Rias after her greeting and back out the window, Issei, damn, those birds are gone. I wanted to watch them a little more. Now, the question at hand, now that I've verified my suspicions with a confession from her, I have plenty of proof to use against her. I'm sure that her revealing this information to a human could cause her some serious trouble. As such, having this recording could secure an opportunity for my freedom, should it come to it. While I don't appreciate being used as someone's tool or as a pawn in their game, I'm willing to play along for now. It might even grant me access to things and privileges Chairman Sakayaneji can't provide. For now, hopefully, she gets dressed. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. I believe today was the day my rent was due. I told the landlord I'd give it to him this morning before I left for school. He has a spare key to my apartment. With their advance hearing, the pair hear footsteps approaching the door. Hyoudou-kun, today is payment day. It's already. Are you here? You didn't come down to the office, so I figured I'd come check up on you, a voice said from outside the door. Without knocking, the sound of keys can be heard on the door's lock. Issei, even more concerned with Rias, who still hasn't put any clothing on, quickly gets up and grabs the blanket from his bed, quickly grabbing Rias and attempting to cover her body with a piece of fabric. The lock unlatches and the door opens to reveal a man in his late s with dark salt and pepper hair, and wrinkles around his mouth and forehead, eyes closed as he enters, only to witness an unexpected scene. Hyoudou-kun, the man asked, concerned. After witnessing a half Issei lying atop a nude woman with crimson hair and blue eyes, covering just below her s with a blanket, both Issei and Rias look over at the intruder. Issei's face remained unchanging and blank, as Rias cocks an eyebrow and smiles. Rias, good morning, she says politely. Gee, good morning, the man says before covering his eyes and turning around. Hyoudou-kun, when you are finished, please have come by the front desk to drop off your rent payment for the upcoming month. He paused, pardon the intrusion, before walking out of Issei's apartment, shutting the door behind him. A foreign girl, since when did Hyoudou-kun have friends and how did she get in there? I watched the cameras from last night. He came in alone. Well, no matter, good for him, I suppose. The man continued walking down the hallway to the staircase at the end of the balcony. After walking a few steps away, he turns around and looks back, confused, before shaking his head and continuing to make his way down the stairs to the ground floor. Rias looks up at Issei, hovering mere inches from her face, her eyes trailing down his abdomen before looking back up at him and smiling. Issei just continues to look at the door before sighing and getting up and off of Rias. Issei sits back down in his chair and gives Rias a look that says, see, I told you. Rias, your neighbor is quite the nosy individual. I didn't expect him to have a key to your apartment. Is he a friend of yours? Rias asked, unbothered by the intrusion, or the trouble it might cause for Issei later down the line. In fact, she finds it rather humorous. Issei, I can still see them, Issei said, hoping that Rias would get the hint and put on clothing. Especially now that someone has come in and seen the two of them in this state. Rias, see what she asked, feigning ignorance and egging the situation on. Issei, your s, or rather your entire body. Issei responded, beginning to get annoyed with how blatantly Rias was flirting with him, or at least, trying to seduce him. This game is one that works on weak-minded and weak-willed individuals, Gremory-san, so I'm sorry to say, but, unfortunately for you, it won't work on me. Issei thought to himself as he shifted his attention away from the window and back onto her. Rias, you're free to look if you like, she said, a smile playfully gracing her lips, as she stood up from the bed, walking over to a pile of neatly folded clothes, her clothes, as Issei looked at her, dumbfounded that she just said what she said. Issei, you're free to look if you like. A phrase like that exists in Japanese, he said, pausing before continuing. Gremory-senpai, are you sure you should be saying that so freely, especially a woman of your status? Issei asked, concerned, trying to get an answer behind her strange behavior. Has the reputation of being a pervert distorted her perception of me? While I can't complain about the advantage, it does make me concerned that this sort of occurrence is going to be happening again, often. Rias reached down and grabbed her panties from the pile of clothes, slowly bending over and slipping them on, in full view of Issei, whose eyes she felt on her still. Still looking towards the door, away from Issei, Rias begins to speak. Rias, is your shoulder all right? She asked, turning around and placing her hands on her hips as she looked at the boy sitting calmly in the chair. Issei, he replied, confused. Rias, your shoulder where you were stabbed. Rias clarified for him. How he was confused by what she said, she was unsure. Issei, I know she said it was real already, but just for extra information, I'll use that logic line again. Issei thought to himself, before asking himself, out loud, how does she know about my dream? Rias, it wasn't a dream, she stated again, rolling her eyes at the sheer willful ignorance of the young man sitting there. He had successfully deduced she was a devil before she had the opportunity to share that information with him, as well as made the connection about her being his master without any prior conversations or context clues. How was it then that he either forgot or simply ignored her? The first time she told him, continuing, while putting on her bra, she said, your body is unexpectedly resilient and much tougher than I thought it would be. That was a severe wound, likely fatal, yet your body healed with only one night of treatment. Issei, treatment? He asked, confused. Issei knew his body was quick to heal, it always had been. However, healing from an injury like that, in one night, impossible. He had a suspicion Rias had something to do with it, especially how she phrased the word treatment, but wanted her to confirm his suspicions herself, without him asking her directly. Luckily for him, it seemed that the crimson-haired girl was more than happy to divulge information, like water flowing freely from a fully opened faucet. Rias, I shared some of my magic with your injured and weakened body. Say, she stated, bluntly and matter-of-factly, turning around so her back faced Issei. While looking over her shoulder and pulling her hair forward, exposing her neck and upper shoulders, she looked at Issei once again, and asked, would you fasten me up? Issei, she's clearly trying to manipulate me through seduction, plus sharing magic. Very well, Gremory-san, I'll play your game. I assume she slept with me through the night after sharing her magic, as it must have taken a toll on her. Magic must work, at least according to what Internet Sensei said when he asked, in a similar capacity to stamina. With more grueling tasks requiring more effort, placing a higher strain on a person's reserves. I woke up beside her, who was also. My guess is that this treatment requires skin-to-skin physical contact or as close to it as possible. I suppose that makes sense. Though it doesn't explain why on Monday morning, after my date with Yuma, I woke up clothed. I had been pierced through my abdomen, not far from my stomach, which should have been even more fatal and, theoretically, more difficult and taxing to heal. So why is it that she is here today, but wasn't at that time? Issei thought. I suppose, are you sure it's all right? He asked, getting up from his chair and approaching his master. After receiving a hum and nod of consent, he continued. More to the point, senpai, why was I undressed? Issei asked, wanting to confirm if his guess was correct. Rias, I just told you, she answered in a slightly condescending tone. I shared my magic with you to heal your body and wounds. Issei, she's clearly leaving something out. Likely for dramatic effect or something along those lines. I'm impressed with her showmanship, it's quite good, but it's getting a little annoying playing the fool for her right now. Issei thought to himself while fastening her brow. Rias, by embracing you. She finished her sentence, just as Issei finished fastening her brow. She expected to have taken the young man by surprise, but to the contrary, he just finished fastening her bra and took his hands away, before turning around to begin fixing and making his bed. He moves and acts like a robot. Who is this guy? I was certain that reveal would get him. After all, he hangs out with those two perverts like they're friends. So, I figured I'd be able to win him over, or at least, get a reaction from him. Ugh, she thought as she watched him. Issei, embracing me, huh? Issei asked, not turning around, but continuing to make the bed. So does that mean, Rias? It's alright, after all, Rias said, approaching Issei from behind and getting close to his ear. I'm still a virgin. Issei, I see, is that right? Issei said, relieved that he hadn't been assaulted while unconscious and injured. Rias, come on now, no reaction, she said, astonished. I'll just have to step it up a notch, she thought confidently. Reaching out and softly grabbing Issei's chin, gently turning his head to face her as her face approached his. As only a few centimeters separated them, she said, this world is filled with many wonders, after all. Issei, wonders, he repeated, interested in what she was talking about. Only to come mere centimeters away from being assaulted by her lips, as she pulled him close before running her thumb over his lower lip, playing with it softly. Now this is getting uncomfortable. I suppose I should deliver the killing blow to this conversation, Issei thought as he was subjected to this strange treatment. Gremory-senpai, you were talking about being a dev. Issei was beginning to say, only to be cut off by Rias. Rias, yes, I am a devil. And yes, I am your master. Rias cut him off, then looked at him and smiled. So, can I call you Issei? Issei. Behind his perpetually blank face, Issei smirked. Checkmate. This should be enough. I've got everything I need for now. Not attempting a smile in return, Issei stuck out his hand for a handshake, as he was taught by Matsuo-san, before Rias reached out her hand, taking Issei's and shaking it. RD person POV. Outside Ko Academy, in the front courtyard, students gather with shocked and stunned looks on their faces. The small male demographic, gritting their teeth in jealousy and disbelief at the scene they are witnessing. The female demographic, a much larger population of students, clung to each other in horror and terror at the concept that the scene they saw implied. The entire gathered student body voiced their disbelief, some louder and more direct than others. Random male student, and no way. Really, random male student, how? Random male student, him. Why him? Random male student, I am possible, and with him, too. Random female students, screaming and yelling in disbelief and sympathetic pain. Brown-haired ponytail kendo club member, that vulgar brute, of all people, ginger kendo club member, Rias Wani-sama. The scene causing this stir was Rias Gremory, one of the two queens of Ko, walking proud and beautiful, followed closely by a dull-looking, brown-haired who never wore his tie properly tight, so his uniform shirt's collar was always open, exposing his neck and some of his collarbone, one of the pervert trio, and relative loner, Issei Hyoudou. The two walking in tandem, to anyone watching it looked as though they were walking together, which was true. The perception one might have, though, watching the two walking together, was that of a dog or puppy, who had just gotten scolded, following his proud owner around. Issei walked with his head down, shoulders hunched, and his bag slung, in hand, lazily over his shoulder. Not necessarily the happiest with the recent turn of events. Issei, this is overly troublesome, so much attention. Here I am, walking alongside the supposed number one idol in this school, Rias Gremory-san. I'm sure that any of the male students in that crowd would kill to be in my spot. They might even attempt to kill me to try and take it. Well, I'd like to see them try. Though it's not like I had much of a choice in this matter, she simply demanded to be walked to school, by me specifically, clarified to me after I attempted to get another co-student to walk with her. The girls seemed to be upset at the concept of their pure, shining starlet Rias Wani-chan walking with a person like me. While I can't blame them, calling me a vulgar brute is going a little too far, I think. I would say I'm a drab brute if anything, Issei thought as he unwillingly walked alongside his master. Though he supposed the correct term would be mistress, he wasn't going to question the small details yet when he still didn't have his bearing on the larger function and operation of the machine he had just been introduced to. Rias had asked, a more fitting description would be, insisted, without any understanding of the meaning of the word "endo" apparently. He would have denied using the many Northern European dialects he knew how to speak, as perhaps then he might get his message across, but she never gave him the opportunity, walking off like a princess while leaving him to trail behind her unwillingly like a lost puppy. Once the pair had reached the main school building's entry, Rias turned to Issei and began to speak to him, interrupting his silent complaints about the situation he found himself in. "Rias, I will send someone for you later," she told Issei, without much explanation to follow. "Issei, send someone?" he asked, confused as to why someone would be coming after him. If she intended to test him, he would not comply willingly, and she would have to force him to participate. Should this person be someone like he's dealt with in the past, the sort of people that man would send for him, he would definitely be releasing the recorded audio today after school. Rias Gremory would see the results of her threats. "Rias, yes, I'll be seeing you after school as well," she answered, clearing any doubts or concerns that Issei had, for the time being. She then turned and began walking away, into the school's hallways without looking back or around at the large crowd, who had just listened to their conversation. A conversation that personally Issei would have much rather had it take place in private or in a lower tone of voice. As Issei now, as a result of Rias Gremory's blasé attitude, had the eyes of everyone around, looking solely at him. Issei, damn, she couldn't have been more secretive about that. Does she have no concern for public perception, or does she know that, even though just I'm following her directions and requests, I am the one who will be publicly questioned and ridiculed as a result of her actions? Issei thought to himself as he watched her walk away, critiquing her social skills while barely maintaining his own social life within school. Speaking of which, Matsuda, Issei Matsuda shouted, accompanied by the sound of rapid, heavy footsteps. Issei then turned to the side to see Matsuda approaching rapidly, with his fist raised and poised to attack. Issei stepped backward slightly, leaving one foot out as Matsuda came rushing in to hit him. Matsuda, not being a fighter nor very perceptive of his environment when it doesn't involve creeping on women, without their knowledge or consent, did not notice the tripping hazard and quick shift in Issei's footing. Matsuda tripped over Issei's foot and lost his balance, falling face first into one of the support pillars on the ground floor of the main school building. Issei had been expecting to be attacked by someone, but not by Matsuda. Apparently Issei had judged his character wrong, as, after sitting down and grabbing his nose, which was bleeding after hitting the column at full force, Matsuda turned to Issei and said, "Matsuda, Issei, you damn traitor. I thought we were all supposed to have a united front in being unpopular." Matsuda shouted through his hand, with tears running from his eyes matching the blood that ran down his face. "Motohama, Matsuda. Calm down. Are you okay?" Motohama approached Matsuda and put a hand on his shoulder. Matsuda looked over at Motohama in pain and with a story of betrayal and sadness painted across his unattractive, injured face. "Matsuda, Motohama," he says weakly, still holding his nose in an attempt to slow and eventually stop the heavy bleeding. Tears still streaming down his face freely. "Motohama, look," Motohama says to Matsuda, before turning his attention to Issei, who still stood there, nonchalantly, and with his free hand in his pants pocket. "Let's just hear what Issei has to say for himself," he said, turning to Matsuda after putting a hand on his shoulder, hoping to calm him a little. Just when Matsuda seemed to accept Motohama's idea, Motohama turned back to look at Issei, pointing a finger at him accusingly. "What the hell happened to you after you left yesterday?" Motohama shouted, growing furious at Issei's uncaring attitude about the entire situation. A small crowd had gathered, interested in the downfall and quick deterioration of the notorious Pervert trio, closely watching the exchange with interest. Some chuckling to themselves about the state Matsuda had found himself in after a sloppy surprise attack. Others were muttering about what Motohama had said to Matsuda, interested in talking to each other in anticipation of a possible explanation by Issei, the target of everyone's mire, curiosity, and jealousy. While a large majority didn't want to know what the trio had been doing after school the previous afternoon. But unfortunately, they had a fairly good guess as to what type of activities were occurring in that dastardly place. "Issei, Matsuda." Motohama Issei spoke softly but with a crushing weight of intangible power and intent behind those words. The two looked at Issei, who had stopped masking his true eyes, and in their otaku-wired brains, watched as a tremendous amount of bloodlust and pressure was released from their brown-haired friend. This will put them in their place and be my revenge for the attempted sneak attack from Matsuda. Issei then stopped releasing the bloodlust and pressure, and then looked at them with the darkness in his eyes hidden. Have you ever seen real boobs up close? He said, a smug tone to his voice and with a raised eyebrow as he asked this to the two perverts, before spinning on his heel and started slowly walking deeper into the main school building, not giving them a chance to react or say anything in response. The two perverts watched his slowly shrinking back, in a state of shock, with their jaws hanging open like fools. The realization that Issei had done something these two hadn't, and with someone like Rias Senpai, was too much for them to bear. They didn't respond as words came out of their open mouths as choked breaths and grunts. Somewhere else in Ko Academy, Rias was climbing a flight of stairs, almost reaching the floor she was heading for when she heard a voice speak to her and ask her something. So he's the one? Asked a short girl, with a short, black, bob haircut and glasses over her pinkish red eyes. A subtle smile on her face as she looks over and makes eye contact with Rias. Good day, Rias, she said, the smile getting more prominent. Rias, good day, Sona, Rias replied happily. She walked over to stand next to the girl named Sona, who was leaning against a pillar on a stair break, overlooking the entryway where she could see the pervert trio fighting, while Motohama holding and restraining an angry, struggling Matsuda from attacking the calm, cool Issei. Sona turned her attention from the approaching Rias, and looked down at the trio, specifically the brown-haired boy, known for being exceptionally boring and dull, besides being dragged into that duo's deviant and perverse behavior. It's not like you to make him a member of your household so full tilt, Sona said, with a suspicious tone in her voice, clearly attempting to make an unspoken statement towards Rias. Rias? Oh, no, Rias asked rhetorically, looking down at Issei beginning to turn and walk away from the pervert duo, an exasperated look on his usually blank face. Well, it's kind of like I've gotten a stupid younger brother, Rias continued, giggling after saying that. She knew what game Sona was attempting to play, but her interaction with Issei this morning was a concern she wasn't willing to share with Sona. At least, not yet anyway. Sona looked at Rias out of the corner of her eye, catching the small movements in Rias's face and expression. Rias was lying, or if she wasn't, she was hiding something. That much is clear to Sona. As Sona looks from Rias back to the ground floor, now without Issei in sight, she simply says, "Oh." After classes, classroom B. Issei sits in his seat, his eyes closed with his hands folded together in front of his mouth, resting his chin on his extended thumbs and resting his elbows on his desk. Bored, Issei Izmir moves away from checkmate in the game he's playing, mentally of course. As Issei is about to claim another victory, he breathes out a sigh. Issei, and that's checkmate. Issei sighs, then says to himself, she said she was going to send someone to come and collect me after class, but no one ever came. I guess I'll head home. Issei is interrupted by high-pitched squeals of delight from the girls in his classroom. He turns to look at the back door of the classroom, turning his head over his shoulder, and sees the cause of the outbreak of female pleasure. The one, the only Yudo Kiba. What could the Prince of Ko want with me? Could it be that he's angry at me for stealing Rias, or clearly not knowing my place? No. I don't think that's the case. So what is he here for? Kiba, pardon me, please, Kiba said gently after being surrounded by female students. He put his hand up to greet but also unspokenly asked for space. Random female classmate. Go ahead. Random female classmate. Sorry, it's not very tidy in here, but go ahead. Hirata. Hello, Kiba, he said in greeting, the only male student in the class, besides Issei, who seemed unbothered and unacknowledging of Kiba's presence, who didn't seem to have any guarded hostility for Kiba. Kiba. Hello, Hirata. Kiba returned the greeting with a smile, and continued walking into the room, approaching Issei's desk. Issei, shit, he's coming towards me. Could he actually be after me because of Rias? I sure hope not. I don't want to fight someone with enough social power to make every woman at Ko Academy despise me even more than they already do. Issei thought as he looked in the opposite direction, through the window, towards his favorite view, the outside lawn also overlooking a forested area of campus in the distance. Kiba, hey, you there? Hello? Kiba said, speaking directly to Issei, who was currently ignoring his presence. Issei. Me, what business do you have with me, Kiba-san? Issei asked, hoping for the answer to be simple or a misunderstanding. Kiba, I'm here to get you on an errand for Rias-senpai. Kiba replied to Issei's questions while keeping a smile on his face. Issei, then your Issei started to speak, only for Kiba to speak again. Kiba, well then, would you mind coming with me? Kiba asks. This time his smile faltered a little. Kiba's patience was wearing a little thin with this guy. Brown-haired kendo club girl. Oh no! Kiba will be walking with that dull, sleazy guy Hyoudou. She cried, positively shocked that the prince would want to be around someone so perverted. Ginger kendo club girl, no Kiba-kun. You'll be contaminated. Don't do it! She cried, trying to reason with her lovely prince. Brown-haired kendo club girl, Kiba-kun, I won't have you pairing up with him, of all people. I can't bear the thought of you around that sleazy Hyoudou. Issei, man, you really caused a scene, Issei said, bored and irritated. Let's go, Issei finished, as he grabbed his bag and threw it over his shoulder while he stood up from his seat, putting his hands in his pockets and looking at Kiba, then beyond him at the glares he was getting from the crowd of girls near the door to the classroom. Really bothersome. RD person POV. A few minutes later, in the old school building, within a relatively dimly lit room, lit by only multiple candlesticks placed sparingly around the room, furnished with fancy-looking sofas, a plush carpet of a deep crimson color, fancy wallpaper on the walls, with dark drapes covering the window, preventing any natural light from getting into this room. Painting mounted on the wall, framed with ornate and expensive picture frames. In one corner of the room sat what appeared to be a small altar, with an excessive amount of fancy, golden candlesticks, with a statuette of a female in a dress carved from what seemed like marble. Multiple items that looked like flowers were laid out at the base of the statuette and surrounding it. As Issei and Kiba entered this room, it takes a moment for Issei's eyes to adjust to the room. Issei looked around for a moment before gaining his bearings and looking at Kiba, who he had refrained from speaking to until this point. Issei, what room is this? As Issei's vision cleared, he noticed a familiar figure, a girl with white hair wearing a black cat ornament, sitting on one of the couches, eating what looked like a piece of fudge. Wait, isn't that? Issei speaks out loud, asking no one in particular. Kiba, that's our first year, Tuju Kaneko-san, Kiba answered, before turning to look at the boy beside him. Upon hearing her name, the girl, known as Kaneko, turns and looks at the two new arrivals in the room, whom she had failed to notice before. She stops eating her fudge to look over and makes eye contact with Issei. She has golden eyes, similar to Issei's but in a lighter tone with an odd shine to them, that Issei knew he had seen before. Even earlier than yesterday evening, when he saw that she too showed up to defend Rias against Danhasik, the fallen angel who attacked Issei, just before he lost consciousness. Kiba, and this is Hyoudou Issei Dano. Kiba had turned to Kaneko to introduce the newcomer. Issei waved his hand in greeting to Kaneko, who just nodded in acknowledgement before turning back to the sweet treat she had been enjoying before being disturbed. Issei, that face, that hair, those eyes, and her relatively small stature. I recognize her, but from where she's a relatively popular figure here at Ko Academy, something like a mascot character. I believe I heard Motohama and Matsuda call her that once. Popular not only with the students of her grade but also with the second and third years. Not only the students of the opposite gender but the female demographic as well, apparently. The first year, who was known as Tuju Kaneko-chan by the student body. I hadn't heard that she was a member of the Occult Research Club as well. What a pleasantly convenient coincidence, Issei thought as he analyzed the girl named Kaneko. Issei was confident he had seen her before, staying relatively close to him, while also maintaining a distance. Wanting to stay neutral with his greeting, he goes with his fallback for when he doesn't know what to say. Looking away, Issei began to ponder, so she is also a member of the ORC, interesting. Issei understood now and was beginning to unravel the relatively simple mystery in front of him. When his attention is taken away to a curtain to the side of the room. The sound of running water makes him curious, that is, until he realizes what is behind said curtain. Is that it's a shower? In the clubroom, no less. And there's someone in there, that figure, is it Gremory-san? It is, isn't it? Issei thought to himself, first in surprise, then in annoyance. President, your clothes are ready. A female voice that Issei didn't recognize spoke from somewhere he couldn't see. But he did indeed confirm his suspicion about who was in the clubroom's attached shower. Rias, thank you, Akino, she said gently, turning off the running water and getting ready to step out and get dressed. Issei, it's Gremory-sen, I knew it. Issei thought, unenthused about his upcoming time here, especially the concept of being bossed around by these senior members, as they could be called. Kaneko, what a dull look on your face. Kaneko stated bluntly. At this point, she had finished the fudge and was eating something else, something that looked like a sandwich. Issei just looked at the girl blankly. As he was about to retort, the unseen voice spoke again. Akino, a girl with black hair tied into a ponytail with a ribbon, which Issei deduced to be Akino, spoke. The girl began walking towards Issei, taking slow steps. She had her arms held in front of her. Whether she was using them to push out her bust or not, Issei couldn't tell, but from the way they swayed as she walked, he assumed she was doing it on purpose. As she got close to Issei, she began to speak again. Fu, so you are the new club member, right? I'm pleased to meet you. She then bowed in greeting to Issei, before standing up, once again making her ass sway, almost unnaturally. I'm the vice president of the Occult Research Club, Himejima Akino. I am pleased to make your acquaintance. Akino gave Issei a smile and a small, polite laugh. Issei, I'm Hayata Issei, a pleasure. Issei greeted the vice president, bowing the same way she did as a greeting, to show respect. Issei stood straight once more, analyzing the girl in front of him. Long, straight black hair, kept in a ponytail. A rare beauty in modern Japan, falling in line with traditional Japanese beauty standards. Objectively, when compared side by side with Gremory-san, Himejima Senpai stands on equal footing when it comes to the debate of beauty and looks labeled one of the two great ladies of Ko Academy, Himejima Akino-san. Her kind personality along with her stunning appearance make her a true target of affection for almost any man, though I can't help but feel as though she hides a darker, more dangerous side to her. That smile in the wrong situation, a smile like that might seem sadistic and hollow to those on the receiving end of it. This club truly is interesting. Issei gathered his thoughts, continuing to pay close attention to his surroundings. After all, he was by all rights a loner, who had no place being with some of the most popular and influential individuals in Ko Academy, especially on such a personal level. The curtain partitioning the shower from the general club room was slid open, pulling Issei out of his thoughts. Stepping out was a fully dressed Rias Gremory, with a towel in hand drying her still damp hair. Looking at the assembled group, she smiled before speaking. Rias, thanks for waiting, she said, looking directly at Issei for a moment, before continuing, sorry about this. I hadn't washed up since I left your house this morning. Emphasizing the fact that she had stayed the night at Issei's apartment. Uninvited, to be clear, and essentially snuggled him to health that night. Something that Issei was still struggling to register and rationalize was the reason why she looked at him like a hungry animal this morning, and still even now, continues to look at him with that discomforting, predatory gaze. Issei, right, I don't mind. Sorry about the inconvenience this morning, Issei stated, trying to make the situation as clear as possible to those who were likely just learning about that just now. Rias, okay. Now that all of us are here, Rias said excitedly. Smiling once again at Issei and the assembled students, we welcome you to the Occult Research Club. Once everybody besides Rias took a seat on the fancy sofas in the middle of the room, Rias continued her greeting and explanation of the Occult Research Club to Issei. However, Rias paused, likely for dramatic effect for Issei. Issei Rias, the Occult Research Club is just an assumed false front, something of a hobby of mine, she continued. She looked at Issei as he began to speak. Issei, a front, I suppose that makes sense. I can assume that the ORC is in some way associated with supernaturals. Likely devils, as that is what Gremory-san is, and I doubt that they allow inter-faction alliances or friendships, based on the little interaction I witnessed last night. Theoretically, everyone in the club is likely also a devil of some sort. Smart. Using a school club with not much general interest, a false perception of a high bar of acceptance, and the elegance and popularity of the members make it difficult to work up the courage to apply for membership. A perfectly designed false front, Gremory-san. I'm willing to praise you on this. However, it would never be enough to hide you from me, should I have desired to discover your secrets. Continuing to feign ignorance with the group, Issei looked at Rias and asked, I'm sorry. A front for what exactly? Rias, I'll get straight to the point then. We are devils. She stated matter-of-factly, confirming Issei's theory almost immediately. He folded his hands in front of him and waited for Rias to continue. That man yesterday, with black wings. Rias looks at Issei, making direct eye contact. That was a fallen angel. Issei purposefully made his eyes widen in shock, hoping to fool Rias and the other members of the Occult Research Club. They are angels who are in service directly to God. However, they came to possess corrupt emotions, and descended into the underworld as a result. They are actively trying to wipe us devils out of existence, while simultaneously manipulating the minds and emotions of humans. Since the distant past, fallen angels have been fighting for the subjugation of the underworld, what you in the human realm know of as hell. There are also other angels aside from the fallen angels, who come down on orders from God to defeat us devils. In other words, there is a perpetual three-way standoff between factions. She finished explaining. Issei, I see things are making a bit more sense now. However, the concept that hell is real, along with devils, fallen angels, and angels working with God is a heavy one. The presence and existence of devils and fallen angels explains some of the things that happen in the world, but it also implies that Judeo-Christian religions are correct, at least to some extent. Meaning that there is, or at least was, a singular God. The biblical God. How interesting. Issei was processing the information being handed to him on a silver platter. He wasn't going to start expressing doubts now, not after everything that's happened. Rias, have you understood everything up until now? Rias asked him kindly. However, she was closely watching his expressions. She had a feeling he understood more than she explained to him. Issei, sorry, but this all seems to be a little too much. Especially for an average high school student. Issei said, emphasizing the word average and continuing to feign ignorance for as long as possible. Scratching the back of his head, he continued to look at Rias, waiting for her to continue speaking and get to the part he really wanted to hear. Rias, Amano Yuma, was all she said before locking eyes with Issei, staring him down. You didn't forget about her, right? She asked, cocking her eyebrow accusingly. You even went on a date with her, didn't you? Issei narrowed his eyes. There it is. Just as expected, Issei thought as he looked at Rias, and then at the other members of the ORC. I don't know where you heard that name, but I don't like her being talked about in some occult club. And honestly, I'm not happy about my memories of the time I had with her being altered. Issei stated, standing up off of the sofa he was sitting on. Let's see if she'll show her hand when I threaten to walk. I beg your pardon, but I'll be going now, Issei said. As he turned to start walking away, Rias grabbed something, a small piece of paper. Issei knew what would be on the paper. As Rias tossed the small paper on the table, sliding over near Issei, he saw that it was, indeed, a picture of him and Yuma together. Rias, she really did exist, that is a fact, Rias said, ignoring the statement made by Issei about memory alteration. RD person POV, inside the ORC clubroom, with Issei and the ORC members. Rias, that's her right? Amano Yuma? Rias asked rhetorically. Issei, indeed that is her. But how did you get this? Issei asked, trying to further gather information from Rias. Rias, that girl, she said, before correcting herself, or rather, that fallen angel is of the same make as that being who attacked you last night. Rias looked back at Issei and leaned against her desk. Issei, but Matsuda and Motohama didn't remember her. Her address, phone number, and email disappeared from my phone as well, Issei said, trying to reason how it could have happened out loud. Rias, she used her power. Just like I did with your landlord, she said, smiling at Issei. Issei, I understand now. That's why he didn't bring up what he did this morning, nor did he look at her in any funny way during the transaction. Interesting. Well, at least I know it wasn't Rias or one of her pieces that messed with people's memories and my privacy. Issei nodded to himself in understanding. It was going to be easier to work with this group now that he knew they hadn't done anything nefarious to him yet. Rias, this fallen angel, completed her objective, and so she erased all memories and records of herself from the people and things around you. Rias clarified for him. Issei, damn, so there probably won't be an audio recording. What a waste. Objective, let me guess, Issei said, sighing at the likely answer. He really didn't want to do this. It seemed like this was a necessary variable to add to the plans. He would secure his freedom, one way or another, and he didn't care what he needed to do in order to obtain it. Rias, yes, to kill you. She answered his unfinished sentence. To ascertain whether or not there was something dangerous hidden within you. Once that was verified, you were killed by being run through by a spear of light. She elaborated. Issei remembered Yuma mentioning something about blaming God for having that sacred gear dwell within him. Is that what Rias was referring to? Issei, come to think of it, Yuma mentioned something like that too. If I remember correctly, it was sacred gear. Issei stated, plainly recalling Yuma's words. The way she spoke about it made him interested, though he figured Rias, or someone from her troop, would explain for him. Rias, yes, sacred gear. Rias stated plainly. Akino, sacred gear, it's a non-standard power that dwells within only a select few people. It is said that many historic figures possess this power. Akino spoke, informing Issei of what sacred gear is. The entire explanation, the kind, placid smile never left her face. Rias, occasionally, there are even those who possess enough power that they become a threat to fallen angels and devils. Issei, would you please hold up your left hand for me? Rias continued the explanation from where Akino had finished, before asking Issei to perform that simple task, with which he complied immediately. Issei, this is bad, very, very bad. Should my past get leaked, they would know I pose a very serious threat to their way of being, and that is just one more group hunting me. It seems like no matter what I do, so long as I exist solely to be hunted. Maybe Yuma was right. Perhaps I should blame God for all of this. Just kidding. Issei had to adjust his face to prevent it from darkening. The last thing he wanted was to be exposed to this group before he had the opportunity to collect them as his pieces. Rias, Issei, please close your eyes, then try to think of something you feel to be the strongest. Rias said, putting a finger up to her cheek. Continuing to look at Issei, holding his hand up, as though he were trying to get a teacher's attention to ask a question. Issei, you're asking me to do this out of nowhere? Issei asked indignantly. He wasn't sure what point she was trying to prove and, honestly, wished she would hurry up and explain already. Rias, focus, Issei. Issei closed his eyes, repeating the words focus, focus, out loud to himself, again and again, as he tried to envision something, the definition of strength. Only to come out blank, he proceeded to open his eyes again. Issei, perhaps in order to imagine something as the strongest, you need to be able to feel something as the strongest. I suppose my lack of proficiency in the concept of feeling may be a defect that man had overlooked. This may just be hopeless, Issei thought to himself. Sighing as his first attempt failed, Issei looked at Rias, disappointment evident in his expression. Rias, you had it. Issei, try again. Come on, focus, focus, Rias said, repeating the phrase Issei said to himself mere moments before during his first attempt, eliciting an eye roll from Issei. Issei once again shut his eyes and attempted to envision the meaning of strength for him. Holding his arm in the air like a fool, he once again recited the mantra of focus, focus, repeatedly, in an attempt to make the words work on his psyche like a magical incantation, and for all he knew, it just might. As Issei chuckles inwardly, his concentration is broken by his own error this time. If the first failure was disappointing, this second failure made him frustrated. Making something akin to a growling noise in the back of his throat to voice his displeasure with himself for being the cause of this failed attempt. Issei, I'm sorry, this is getting frustrating. Can I try one more time? Issei asked, looking at Rias, who was now sitting with both her legs on the desk, knees pulled against her chest, pressing against her s, causing them to flare out from behind them. Her skirt, also dangerously positioned in her current seating arrangement, was not hiding anything, revealing the black underwear Rias was wearing. Again. I swear, it's really like she's going out of her way to do this. I can't understand her reasoning, Issei thought as he moved to sit back in the seat, as he had fallen from it during this last attempt. According to Rias, my body stiffened up and I fell from the chair and hit the ground. Rias, I'm concerned with what just occurred on his last attempt. I want to deny him and tell him to wait, that it will come naturally, but it seems he's rather upset. Maybe one more attempt can hurt, she thought, before answering Issei's request. Yes, Issei, come on, try one more time. Focus, focus, she cheered, trying to lighten his mood in the slightest. The room had become extremely tense and filled with a heavy aura once Issei had awoken from this last attempt, and Rias wasn't willing to face whatever would come should she deny the young man in front of her, asking no, demanding to try a third time. Issei shut his eyes once again and reassumed the uncomfortable position he was told to hold while performing this task. Issei took a few deep breaths to calm the irritation building up in his chest. He did his best to shut out the noises of anything else. He attempted to numb the feelings throughout his entire body. His mouth, he remembered the taste. It was the taste of bland chicken on plain white rice, the only real flavor, coming from the pickled parsnip shavings. Issei's body went limp, as all Issei could see around him. Thanks for watching this video. You really enjoy this video. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow Anigrinner for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.